Party. This is the Onion Week in Review. Stunned officials from the Marine Conservation Institute announced this week that the past half-century of climate change and habitat loss somehow hasn't managed to take down the parrotfish. Biologists stress that despite destructive chemical runoff, rising ocean temperatures, and overfishing, the persistent little shits were somehow plugging right along like nothing had even happened.
You look at the oil spills, greenhouse gases, and God knows what else we're throwing at them, and you think, yeah, those subtropical should have been wiped out decades ago. But nope, these sons of bitches are still around and doing better than ever.
In other news, a grasshopper is dismembered by a future Supreme Court justice. A man having a great time will soon have to apologize to everyone, and Rand Paul pretends to be asleep so his dad will carry him in from the car.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160 is the number for you to call in and talk about whatever you want. It's up to you. It's a free talk. It's a open phone show. Free Talk Live. And with you in the studio tonight, it's me, Bonnie,
Lori, and Nikki.
And for the first, at least, segment, I'm not going to be taking any other calls because I do have. Normally we don't do guests on this show, but the show is an open phones call, and we have a guest named Mark Passio on to talk about his upcoming event. Mark, tell us a little bit about Two Masks, Same Face, the occult origins of Nazism and communism.
Well, I just want to say thank you for letting me come onto the program and help to promote the event. This is an event that I have had planned for maybe about 5 to 6 years. I've been working on researching the content of this upcoming all-day presentation, and I'm finally going to be delivering the presentation this Saturday, October 21st, at the Exton Hotel and Conference Center. The presentation is entitled Two Masks, Same Face, The Dark Occult Origins of Nazism and Communism. And it's going to be at the Exton Hotel and Conference Center in Exton, Pennsylvania. We still have invitations available for the event. It's a $60 private donation if you would like to attend in person. It is an in-person event, not an online event, and it will not be streamed on the internet. We will be recording it for later release. But you can still get invites at my website at whatonearthishappening.com, and you can also attend in person. Walk-ins are welcome in person on the day of the event because invites are still available.
So a lot of people might be confused or scoff at you if they hear you say, oh, the same force or religion or entity or group is behind Nazism and communism. Oh, those are totally different things. What do you say to those people?
I say that they significantly lack a whole lot of information that they have not been yet privy to, that they have not yet researched, that they have not discovered. I would say that they do not have the grammar in place for the discovery of an accurate conclusion regarding that. See, in the process of truth discovery, it's a 3-step process. This is known historically as the trivium, and this is something that I teach in the body of my work at whatonearthishappening.com. Most people are operating without the very basic building blocks that they require to discover what is true, or to be able to determine what is not true, what is false, what is misinformation. And basically, people don't have those building blocks of information. They have been either hidden from them, or people in their ignorance and thinking that they currently know all the information that they need to know, willfully ignore the information that is present in their midst and do not gather that grammar, put it all together to be able to analyze it in the second step of the trivium process, and come to an accurate, logical understanding of what all of that information means. And then in the third step, actually take action based upon the truthfulness of the information that they have gathered, and then weaned through and weeded out all of the logical inconsistencies of. So this is the true scientific methodology that almost everybody in the world, number one, doesn't know how it works. Number two, doesn't have that process in hand and isn't actively using it in the course of their everyday lives to determine what's true or not. And quite frankly, it's what sets the body of my work significantly apart from other people's work. And people can scoff all that they want. You know, the truth remains the truth regardless of what anybody's personal opinions or perceptions of the truth happens to be. There is still an objective, discernible, knowable truth that exists independently of human perception. And that's a huge body of my work, that there is objective truth. You know, to think otherwise is to fall into the modern cult of postmodernism, which is actually a big part of what I'm going to be talking about on Saturday, because postmodernism plays into specifically the communist ideology. And of course, the Nazis were an early advocate of it because they wanted to make truth whatever they said it was in their society. So I'm going to talk about the commonalities of both of these forms of totalitarianism, and really the only thing that's truly different about the way that they went about implementing their totalitarian regime is whether they work within national religiosity within one country, or whether they wanted to conquer social institutions and cultural institutions and spread in an international fashion. So National Socialism did the former, and International Socialism or Communism did the latter.
I think that this work is great, and I wish that more people were coming at research from this perspective that you have, because it seems like when people are kind of researching things or learning about things, they're almost blindly trusting the experts, right? And I even think that a lot of the times scientists and whoever, people that are conducting their own research and, you know, doing their own case studies, a lot of it is just like confirming their own point. Like it seems very rare that people are trying to get to the heart of the truth, the real truth, their own personal beliefs aside. And you know, it's a very difficult thing, right? Because we all have our own biases. And, you know, if I'm trying to research something, like, you kind of have that outcome that you want in the back of your head, right? And it's hard to get past that and just...
Especially if you're thinking with emotions and...
which most people are, I'm assuming. And you see that all the time nowadays, where you have like government-funded research and people are like, no, this is the science. And it's like, okay, but that's not... Like, how do we know that that's the truth? And then you have
funded their research.
Exactly. So like you have the people who clearly want a specific outcome funding the research or even doing the research. And to me, like it's difficult for me to trust that science. But then if you dig deeper into it, like a lot of the, you know, COVID stuff and even what Mark is talking about here, if you try to dig deeper into it, you're a conspiracy theorist, and, oh, you think you know more than doctors, and you think you know more than scientists. This person has a doctorate. This person, you know, has way more experience than you. Like, how dare you question the narrative? So you kind of get ostracized and shamed. But for me personally, the truth is more important than anyone's perception of me. And I'm not willing to live a lie just to conform and just to like go along to get along with the rest of society. That's not worth it for me. And I think the truth is more important than that. And like living an authentic life is more important than that. So I think this work is absolutely great. And I wish more people would come at research from this perspective.
So, I think most people are scared of having an internal awakening within themselves. They just want to be told what to think. And everyone around them needs to also think the same thing. So they surround themselves with everybody else in their little echo chambers. And if you dissent from it, blocked, unfriended, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Oh, yeah.
We have wildly different views. And instead of talking to each other and learning from each other, let's just shut each other out because it's scary.
And that's definitely coming from this idea Mark has that there is an objective reality that we can look at and learn what it is. Other people think, oh, I have my truth, you have your truth. We just can't coexist because of the fact that my truth is different than your truth. When in reality, there should be everyone trying to get to the bottom of what the truth is independently from you or anyone else. So, Mark, why do you think it's important specifically for people to learn this truth now about Nazism and communism? Isn't that, playing the devil's advocate, isn't that, years ago?
Well, I make the specific point in the presentation that this is all still actively occurring. We never ideologically defeated the underlying mindsets of Nazism and communism. They're still very much present in the world today, and they work through authoritarian institutions like government. One of the things that was just unpacked there in the discussion, and very profoundly and correctly so, is the idea of people's confirmation bias. And imagine how much money is involved in that whole process of what we laughingly call science today, to confirm the biases of these institutional bodies that act as authoritarians and say that they have, a stranglehold on what is true and what information is allowed to be put out there and even discussed. It's not even just a psychological confirmation bias. It's completely backed up by the amount of money that is used in, government-related science, all working on grant money. Just imagine how much people have invested there, where they don't want to put out anything that is in opposition to the establishment narrative, because they can lose their entire livelihood. And one of the things that I talk about is that we have to get past this idea of trying to think and reason with our emotions. That was also discussed, previously. This is the idea that truth is somehow contingent upon how we feel about information. Our feelings have zero to do with whether something is factually true or not. We cannot gauge the veracity of information upon how it makes us feel internally in our bodies or in our mindset. And part of becoming a mature, rational adult is trying to set aside those feelings of being triggered, of having our worldview challenged, and really making the true, genuine effort to truly think and reason logically outside of our emotional reactions. It's actually one of the caveats or warnings that I give at the very beginning of this presentation, as I do most of my presentations, because I'm a very straight shooter. I don't mince my words. I just say what I feel, and I tell people, if you're offended by it, that isn't my problem. That's your problem. So I have this sort of little bit of a caustic approach to my presentations, because I think the truth is caustic. The truth is just straight out there and in people's face, and if they cannot acknowledge it and admit it for what it is, that isn't the universe's problem. That isn't the truth's problem. That's their problem, and that's what they need to do work upon themselves to move past that mentation. But one of the things that I really think that triggers people, and that people cannot get past, they cannot accept, they won't look into on their own, they don't want to study, they don't want to research into it, is the entire world and realm of the occult, of occultism. And people get triggered by the very word occult.
Well, what is it?
Triggered by the word itself.
What is it, Mark? And do you have any, how did you gain your knowledge about the occult? Is it firsthand knowledge?
It is firsthand knowledge. I was actively involved in what I call dark occult organizations or dark occult societies. And that's, many years in my past, decades into my past. I had to go through a long, dark night of the soul and an intense crisis of conscience in my youth, where once I really deeply realized at a fundamental level, these are people actively engaged in the enslavement of humankind. They want tyranny and enslavement. They want to be the masters of our world, and they want us to be their slaves. And that's ultimately what it boils down to. And they do this work through occultism, through occult knowledge. And the word occult should not be scoffed at. It should not be looked at as some quaint religious notion, nor should it be looked at as something that is to be so feared that we can't even talk about it or discuss it or research into it. The word occult simply means hidden. That's all it ever has meant. That's all it means today. That's all it will ever mean. It means information or knowledge that has not been readily accessible or widely available to the general public. It is intended for specific initiated audiences. It is intended for people who are on the inside. For people who are on the outside of those groups, they are not to receive that knowledge. It is to be left out of their purview. It is to be not looked into by them. It's for certain people, and it's not for other people. At least that's the way that occultists have traditionally looked at occult knowledge. It is hidden for a reason, because the people who are leveraging this knowledge against the people who are ignorant of it are doing so to try to form a power differential over the ignorant masses of humanity. And that's what occultism has been used to do. We have to stop looking at it in religious terms, and we have to start looking at it in terms the truly seen. The occult really means deep, ancient psychological knowledge of how the human psyche works and how the human psyche can be manipulated by those who know a huge amount about how it works versus those who know nothing about human psychology. So if you have a master psychologist who knows everything there is to know about psychology in every aspect, and then you have a person who knows nothing about how the mind works, certainly knows nothing about how they themselves work and how their own psyche works, and that master psychologist wants to do an absolute manipulation game, conduct a manipulation program against somebody who knows nothing about how their own mind works, it would be child's play. It would be absolutely nothing for them to go off and do a number psychologically on that person if they had reasons to do so. That is how we have to look at occult knowledge. That's how we have to look at those who wield it. Occultists are people who have deep and ancient knowledge about how the mind works, and the average ignorant masses of humanity know nothing about how their own minds work, and they could be easily manipulated, and a power differential can be created over the ignorant by the occultists of the world like child's play. It's literally a child's game to them. It's barely a challenge.
And I would say that is just a great, pretty short explanation of what the occult is, because a lot of people, when they hear this kind of talk, they just think, oh, you're talking about quote unquote the Illuminati. That's just
it
something
sounds a
made
little
up.
like woo woo to some people, right?
Right, but if you explain it the way he did, it's just knowledge about the self. It's ancient psychology. Then I think people might start to be able to open up to understand maybe there are things I don't understand, other people understand. It's not just like, oh, some witches in the forest are like putting spells on us. It's not just, oh, they're pouring stuff out of, I believe they're doing something with chemtrails, but I don't know. I was going to say they're not just pouring some kind of dust on us and controlling us that way. It's a pretty easy to understand and to recognize and see type of influence that someone could be putting on the masses.
Yeah, and I think just in general, like in regards to everything, it is very naive to believe that, like, oh, I know all the answers, and I don't know, that's just always been, it feels so naive to me, and to not at least open your mind to things that are hard to believe and listen to somebody else's experience.
You are so far more likely to encounter occultists in Fortune 500 companies, government organizations, government-connected think tanks, financial institutions, medical institutions, law, science, technology. In every one of these institutional bodies than you are to find them in a group of, crazy acolytes like going out in the middle of the woods and playing death metal and sacrificing animals. That's not what the modern occult is. This is Hollywoodized and religious interpretations of what occultism is. Occultism is deep ancient psychology combined with deep knowledge of how the laws of nature and the real laws of science really function in our reality. And that has been hidden from the average person as a mechanism to control them. Once it is converted, knowledge, once it is converted into the ability to take action, is then converted into power. So that knowledge is what is used as the power differential over people. And what I'm going to be explaining in this upcoming presentation on Saturday is all of the occult organizations that actually led to the formation of both Nazism and communism. And they share all common ideologies. Their ideologies are almost identical in what they believed, in how they viewed the world, and how they viewed people, and in what they ultimately wanted to do to, in their terms, in their mentation, to transform society. And this is not something of the past. This is not something that happened past tense and is gone forever. This is something that happened yet is continuing to occur. They are continuing to leverage this knowledge. They are continuing to create new organizations and ideologies by which they hold thrall over all of humanity. The occult mentalities that led to the formation of both Nazism and communism were never defeated. They were never uprooted, they were never exposed, and they certainly were never defeated.
Well, so people, they can go to whatonearthishappening.com and then go to the gift section and give a $60 private donation to go to your event where you're going to be talking about this. But what else would you want them to know about your work, just what on earth is happening in general?
I would want them to understand that what I do differently than other researchers and presenters in this whole field of endeavor is I do not focus upon the 3D everyday events that people see and respond to in a completely reactionary fashion. I set those things largely aside, and what I look at and what I explored is the deep and fundamental underlying psychological causes for the way that people behave. You will never, ever, ever change reality for the better by only focusing on the symptoms and the things that are already manifested because of the way people already have been thinking and continue to think. You will only ever change things for the better by getting down to the underlying root psychological causes of why people think and behave the way that they do. And reality has to be changed in the external domain, the way that things play out in our everyday world, by changing the internal domain, the realm of human thought.
Well, we're going on to break.
If you want to explore that,
yeah, if you wanted to
check out What on Earth is Happening.
Okay, if you wanted to stay on, you could. We're just gonna have a 4-minute break. If you guys want to check out his website, it's whatonearthishappening.com, and that presentation sounds fascinating, and it's happening on October 21st in Exton, Pennsylvania at the Exton Hotel. More coming up, people.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. Physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has left Israel after reaffirming support for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and promising $100 million of aid for Palestinians in Gaza. He backed the Israeli claim that Palestinian militants were responsible for the explosion at a Gaza hospital that killed an estimated 500 people. Biden also said that he'd secured a commitment from Israel to allow food and water in through the Gaza border crossing with Egypt. And the US president gave his rock-solid support to the Israeli Prime Minister. FSN's Sarah Coates reports from Tel Aviv.
A real whirlwind crisis trip for the US president, coming at a time that the US is once again reaffirming its support for Israel, and while this region is really teetering on the brink. Before boarding Air Force One, coming out to say that we will not stand by and do nothing again. He also mentioned the US's support in terms of military aid, saying that the US has sent many resources like aircraft carriers. He also leveled a warning at other regional players. We're talking namely here about Iran and Hezbollah, saying, if you're thinking about attacking Israel, the message remains the same as it has this past week. Don't.
Meanwhile, the United States has vetoed a United Nations resolution on escalations in Gaza. The UN Security Council rejected a draft text put forward by Brazil calling for humanitarian pauses in fighting between Israel and Hamas. FSN's Sally Patterson reports from UN headquarters in New York.
12 in favour, 2 abstentions, and the United States against. The draft UN resolution condemned all violence and hostilities against civilians and called for the immediate release of hostages being held in Gaza. But both the US and the United Kingdom said it needed to be clearer on Israel's right to self-defence. Meanwhile, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire.
US Congressman Jim Jordan has failed for the second time to win enough votes to become Speaker of the House of Representatives, leaving the heart of American democracy in a state of paralysis. FSN's Benji High reports from Washington.
It was not the day of triumph that Jim Jordan had hoped for. Congress's lower chamber remains dysfunctional, rudderless, with huge implications at home and abroad. Without someone wielding the gavel, legislation, including on aid for Israel, simply can't get passed by lawmakers. Speaker-designate Jordan could keep fighting, though the maths isn't in his favour. Republicans may have to look for another, more moderate candidate to coalesce around to fill what Congressman Ken Buck describes as the worst job in America.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's me, Bonnie,
Lori, and Nikki.
And we were just having a really fascinating conversation with Mark Passio from whatonearthishappening.com. Unfortunately, he didn't have any more time, so we're going to be going on to you guys' calls. But if you have anything you want to talk to us about, anything he brought up, you can go ahead and do that. He was calling to promote his upcoming event on Saturday, and you can learn more about that at his website. But now we're going on to more calls from you, and it's we have Dave Ridley. So, Dave, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hey, most people don't know who I am, so I guess I should call myself Dave in New Hampshire at least.
Oh, did I just say
from
Dave?
Ridley Report.
Sorry.
You said Dave Ridley.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know, Dave. I think people know who you are.
Definitely a common enough caller, but yes, Dave Ridley from RidleyReport.com.
So no, I was calling about something else, but yeah, with regard to your guest, in a sense, like that call sort of represents in some ways what's great about the Free State movement is that you've got a guy who's calling in complaining about the occult, and maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong, I don't know, but he's calling into a show that has a co-host who's a Satanist, right? And he's still allowed through because we're supposed to have a big tent of free speech, right?
Yeah, but I don't really think that the kind of Satanist Arya is into, which is like her religion, is really the same thing as what he's talking about. And he gets all into it. If you go listen to his podcast on whatonearthishappening.com and go to the podcast tab, it starts at podcast number 1 from 2010. And he just starts from the basics and builds you up. And he's basically putting you through like an occult initiation of your own, so you can just understand all the stuff that he's learned over the years. And he's not really just talking about like, people like Arya who believe in the 7 tenets of Satanism.
Well, I do agree with the sentiment of what Dave is saying. Like, it doesn't matter what you believe in. Like, we all have different beliefs, and a lot of our callers have different beliefs. And we do like to be a platform for people of different opinions and whatnot and different beliefs.
Free speech.
And then, but I also wanted to make a point about like Satanism. Satanism is actually kind of, I don't even want to call it like close, but I can draw a lot of similarities between a lot of what Mark Passio is talking about and Satanism, because a lot of Satanism is about truth and freedom and like getting to the heart of what the real truth of nature and existence is.
Yeah, especially the exoteric religion is like what is presented to the public. That's what Arya is. And I don't think Mark usually uses the word Satanist. He's usually just saying the occult, because it could be under any guise. Yeah. There are occultists probably in your Christian churches.
Yeah, probably.
And
absolutely.
I mean, what are they hiding at the Vatican?
Yeah, talk about a cult.
Yeah. So, Dave.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I was going to ask him if he had still been on. Is like what his position was about Arya. What she does. Being a Satanist, if he's against that or whatnot. But I only heard the last 10 minutes of his conversation, so you guys may have addressed that earlier.
Well, I can't really answer that for him, so I don't think he said anything about. I mean, he didn't say anything about Arya, so.
Yeah, well, we have a big tent, right? You go to Porkfest, and there's not exactly a large number of Satanists there, but there are Satanists at the same festival as evangelical Christians, and there's not a big problem. So that's an interesting. That's about as wide a divergence as you can get in my mind. Maybe there's wider ones out there, but it proves that people can get along.
Yeah, and actually Mark Passio was there, and so was Arya, so, yep, it does prove that. So you were calling... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was calling about Aaron Day's political candidacy, which my look at your archives indicated you guys hadn't talked about him much recently, maybe since March. Maybe I missed something, but he's a Free Stater. I think, to my knowledge, he is the first Free Stater who's mounting a serious Republican candidacy for presidency.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I would bet I would bet that's true, because I haven't really heard stories of anyone else doing it.
He was on like a Saturday. Yeah, and I guess his big thing, he's trying to keep it pretty simple, and it's just two things basically. He's focused on trying to stop central bank digital currencies by drawing attention to them.
Right.
And he's also he's kind of trying to take the Erica Chenoweth approach, where she says if you can get 3% of a population to do a thing, then your movement is sort of guaranteed success.
Yeah, in his case, it's donation. So he says even if you just donate $1, like it helps him possibly get on the ballot. Is that what you're talking about?
No, everybody does that.
Oh.
What he's asking people to do is more edgy, and it's sort of like he calls it a bank run, but I think it's a little softer. It's a little softer than that. It's more like just getting people to gradually withdraw their money from banks and return it into cryptocurrency. So he's trying to get 3% of people to pull their money out of banks, not on a particular day where it would cause a collapse or anything like that, but just to get them to pull their money out. And I mean, I've pulled almost all my money out of my bank account many times, I think already. So I'm sure it'll happen again sooner or later. But he does have a simple message, if that makes any sense, and he does have a track record of some success.
Yeah, the thing I really like about Aaron Day is every time I tweet on Twitter, something like no presidential candidate is here to save you. This isn't the solution, He always says, I agree. By the way, I'm running for president, because his whole thing is basically he's doing it to bring attention to his ideas. It's not like he necessarily thinks he's going to win. It's more just that gives you a huge platform. As soon as you start running for president, you can get people to interview you. And he has a lot of really interesting ideas. He has a book out. I think it's probably just Aaron Day 2024, something like that. His website. I could probably pull it up while I'm sitting here. But have you read his book, Ridley?
No, and I didn't even know he was running until today. I was listening to PorcFest speeches, and I just saw a speech from 4 or 5 months ago, or maybe 3 months ago, where he gave a speech or something like that. And oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about this. So I guess I'll probably vote for him in the primary, because there's no pure libertarian running on the Republican ticket. No one even close to Ron Paul. So I think Aaron is probably what I'm stuck with, and that's probably not too bad. He's getting something else right. But I'm sorry, you were saying something.
No, I think Nikki just laughed.
No, yeah, it was funny, like the way you phrased that. You're like, oh, this is, the best we got. But I also appreciate how, like what Bonnie was saying, how Aaron would how Bonnie's like, okay, yeah, no politician, no presidential candidate is going to save you. Like, take responsibility for your own life. I like it when my friends that are either running, in any sort of election, either seriously or as a joke, I appreciate it when people can put their ego aside and be like, yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah.
It's just, it makes me respect them more, because sometimes people, if they are, maybe they've been a state rep, for a while, to not feel attacked by a statement like that, and to still be able to recognize that it is true, because I think that makes the difference between our state reps that are good and that are still fully liberty leaning and voting correctly, in my opinion, of course, that's, an opinion, versus the people who are getting a little too into the politics and are like, well, I can't vote for this because I want to get reelected. They're getting sucked in. Yeah, they're getting sucked in to the game versus keeping their principles and I don't care if I get reelected. What is the point of getting reelected if I'm not actually going to make a difference and do what I believe in?
And just vote no for everything that would cause people more money. And, that's what they should be in there doing. If you're not voting to end the war on drugs, Leah Cushman, you're not an actual libertarian, pretending to be a Republican. You're just a Republican. And what's the point of Free Staters putting everything behind someone like that? There's tons of other ones.
I don't think she claims to be a libertarian, right?
She claims to be a Free Stater and a libertarian.
Well,
and
she says she's a conservatarian, right?
Okay, well, that's not even a word. So
well, that's like being a conservative, right?
But that's what I think. That's not what they think.
I thought that was how she describes herself as a conservative.
I've heard her call herself a libertarian and a free stater.
I think people are kind of confused about what, and you know what? Maybe there is a broad spectrum of what a libertarian is, but I think probably if you're a conservative, that is different. If you're not voting
to end the war on drugs, I don't even think.
Well, that's a very conservative stance, right?
Exactly.
Conservatives don't like drugs,
right? And I don't think that makes her libertarian at all.
It wouldn't. Yeah. So that those are different things.
And I'm not just trying to make this all a conversation about how Leah Cushman is just a Republican and not a libertarian.
Oh, there's plenty of state reps that are calling themselves free staters and libertarians that are conservatives.
Yeah.
Or voting conservatively.
Right.
And
I don't think I should move to a state in the north where basically it just ends up being exactly like Texas or Alabama because, we just thought, the right is better than the left. How about neither? And if you get in office, use that as an opportunity to get rid of the system as much as possible from the inside. That's what Jay Noon was going to run or was running on, but he didn't win his election. What do you think, Ridley? Do you think that that's the main purpose of running for, any kind of office?
Well, first I should clarify. I didn't mean to be dismissive of his candidacy. It's not that there's anything wrong with him. It's sad for me that this is not as big a deal as the Ron Paul candidacy, right? Because Ron Paul, came in second in New Hampshire primary, right? And I don't think we're going to get a result like that for Aaron Day. It's just not as big a campaign, but he is successful in a couple of other ways, and that is, like, first of all, he's the one that knocked Kelly Ayotte out of her Senate seat because she was too authoritarian, and he ran against her as a spoiler.
Wow.
On the Libertarian Party ticket.
That's nice. She's like a cop lover.
Yeah, I think that was useful, and it really, I think it got the GOP's attention. They were losing their mind over what he did.
Wow.
So I think that probably has, it's been a reminder to them that they can't ignore the Liberty vote and just throw an authoritarian candidate at us. The other thing that he's hitting on a good cylinder, I think, is he has this concept that you got to strike the root of a problem, just go to the heart of the problem. And I don't know if he's got I don't know if he's picking the right root of the problem. But just by focusing on the central bank digital currencies, that's probably good. At least he has a plan and a solution and a suggested course of action. He's hitting on quite a few cylinders there. So that's what I like about it.
So I found his website. It's Day, his last name, Day, 2024.com, and his little insignia thing here, it's a heart, and the outside of it says bank run now. The inside says halt CBDC, stop World War III, end the Fed. So those are some pretty good, roots to strike at, I'd say.
Yeah, his belief is that if you stop the CBDC, we will stop a lot of fighting. I don't know exactly how that works, but it's basically, CBDCs make it too easy for the government to create money and control people.
He did write a book about it, so if you go to day2024.com, you might be able to find his book. Ian read it and found it, really fascinating, and I think it's called the Bank Run Manifesto as well. Anything else, Ridley?
Well, there's, I guess, another thing. Like, if we were to assume that he's not a very strong candidate, then that means that every vote for him is actually more powerful. Like, if you vote for the number 2 candidate or something like that, your vote is just lost in a sea of votes. But if you vote for someone who's only going to get 6% in the primary or 10% in the primary, that actually your vote goes further. I don't like the idea of waiting around for someone to be Ron Paul before voting for them. At least, I think I'm just glad we've got a Liberty candidate I can vote for in the GOP primary.
Yeah, and not feel like guilty about it, right? Because that's a lot of the reason why I don't vote, especially in the presidential election. I mean, is because it's like, well, what's the point? I hate both of these people. So it's nice that there is somebody you can vote for, that it's like, I agree with the majority of what he's saying. And if he was the president of the United States, he might actually make a significant difference, or at least try to.
Right. Instead of choosing between, this guy wants to put these people in a cage, this guy wants to put those people in a cage. Which one do I pick?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I also like how you said, Dave, like, because everybody's like, oh, if you vote for a third party candidate, I don't want to say everybody, but the majority of people, people I know, a lot of the statists would be like, oh, well, if you vote for a third party candidate, that's a wasted vote. You either have to vote for scumbag A or scumbag B, or else your vote is wasted. I love reframing it as, well, if you don't vote for those, it's almost a wasted vote if you vote for one of those people, because really, does your vote matter in a sea of millions of votes,
right?
Hundreds of millions of votes? I mean, probably not.
All those people who are saying, well, I have to vote for A or B because otherwise it's wasted. If they voted for C, maybe it wouldn't be wasted anymore, in their opinion. Yeah. Maybe it would actually make a difference.
Yeah, if people actually grew up here and did what they actually believed in, we would live in a different place instead of voting for the lesser of two evils.
Or the one that has a chance to win. I always found that was so weird.
Yeah.
It's like, wouldn't they have a chance to win if more people voted for them?
Yeah, right? Yeah.
My adult, 50-year-old boss, when I was 20, the first year I was able to vote, told me that I was acting like a child if I didn't vote for Donald Trump in Utah, where
And
it
the
was obviously
shaming,
going to work. Yeah.
like what's up with the shaming too? There's so much shaming. Where like, if you don't vote, you can't complain. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
I can vote and complain. I cannot vote and complain.
Right. I'm probably not going to vote this year, honestly, but like back
I'm not
then,
registered anymore, but
in 2016, I wanted to vote for Gary Johnson, and I don't know why I had shared that with like my bosses. And seriously, I was actually like bullied by these people, like these grown adults.
yeah, especially
every
like
day.
a lot of like of the boomer generation. It's like,
Right.
how dare you even defy?
This is Gen X, I think. but
Yeah, but I like from my experience, like it seems like a lot of like the older generations are like, you can't do anything
Outside
differently.
the norm, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, how dare you even, like, this is how it is, and like, who are you to think that you are allowed to have control of your life? It's really cringy.
Especially when they're going to die sooner. And I don't know. I always think it's weird. Like one day I knocked on the door of a lady in Maine when I was trying to get people to vote for some candidate for Young Americans for Liberty. This was in 2020. And this woman, her answer, I had to ask them, like, what's the most important topic or whatever, like, that you're worried about this election season? Like, and there was a list of things like, I don't know, taxes raising up and things like that. And she said, honey, I don't care about that stuff at all anymore because I'm just old now. I think it's up to the younger people to figure out these problems, and I'm not going to be here very much longer, so I don't think it should be up to me. And I was just like, kind of true.
Yeah, but that's all the
Kinda
people
based.
that are making the laws and
I
and
wish
controlling
everybody
everything.
and all the elderly people in Congress or
Right.
whatever, I wish they thought that way too.
Me too.
Instead of living in 60 years ago when they were relevant, and they're bringing all of that into now. Like none, your outlook isn't relevant anymore. for
The
world we
Babylon
live in.
Bee or like fake news network made a post that was like, family deciding whether to put grandfather on hospice or have him run for Senate.
Oh my God.
And that was like probably the most accurate thing I've ever heard.
And it's not like I think we should decide those people's lives. None of us here think that. I just want to
Yeah.
be clear for
Yeah.
the radio listeners. We should be running older people's lives. What we really want is for us to all be running our own lives. And it's just kind of a funny thought when you think about a lot of older people trying to tell younger people how to vote. And, basically that is trying to run other people's lives, which is why I don't think any of us on the show do it. Well, at least I don't in the national election. I vote in the local election because it's something that seems more like you could change things. And actual libertarians run as Republicans in New Hampshire, which is why Aaron Day is here. He came here for the Free State Project, and he's actually running for president. And you can check out more about him at day2024.com. Anything else for us, Ridley?
Well, if you think about it, if you vote for a candidate and they win, you become responsible for everything they do, and you'll have to live it down for the rest of your life.
I don't really think so. Do you?
Yeah, I think so. I've voted for bad candidates in the past, and I feel ashamed for it to this day.
I mean, I feel bad sometimes when I think about the fact I voted for Trump, partially because of the fact I was literally bullied into it with the stuff I was just explaining, and also was like kind of tricked. I started seeing all this stuff about how bad Hillary is, and like if Trump doesn't win, then the country is going to be like Sharia
all
law,
the fear-mongering.
I mean, martial law is what I would say.
Yeah.
Just all this crazy stuff. So I ended up voting for Trump, but I don't feel responsible for everything he ever did because human beings are responsible for everything they do. I don't.
Yeah. I also don't love that like guilt. I think it's important, on like an emotional and a spiritual level to like release a lot of like self-guilt of like anything, even if it was your fault, of things in the past. And also like releasing responsibility of other people's actions. You know what I mean? Like
You disagree? Sorry, she was shaking her head.
I just don't think that anyone's vote actually matters. Whoever they want to be the president is going to be the president. So don't feel bad about it.
That is a good
that
point.
too.
I think that most of the time that it doesn't actually matter, and that they just choose a president based on whoever
they draw out of a hat or whatever.
And that's why I just can't possibly.
Me and Stu call it WWE. What's on the season of WWE?
Oh,
yeah, right. Yeah, because like none of it's real.
And
None
Trump
of it's real.
really looks like one of those guys. Like he'd be like an old guy,
Yeah,
that
like
would be super fake.
WrestleMania or whatever. It's
think he did that
We
before.
have Donald Trump versus Hulk Hogan.
Right, yeah.
I think he did do that before, actually. It's starting to sound familiar, like he did one of those really fake wrestling things. And he just looks like one of those guys. But most of the time, that's what I think. That, like, whenever people try to say Trump is obviously, like, trying to save the country because, look, they didn't want him. The media was against him. They didn't want him. I think that that's just kind of what, quote unquote, they want you to believe. And for whatever reason, he served a purpose to them. And he was the one that they chose. Like, I don't think he was like some kind of really good president, and we were like lucky to not have Hillary. I think that they chose him, and it's all just some kind of like a ritual game. I don't know.
It's predetermined. You know,
Yeah.
I believe that as well. I mean, either way, maybe your vote matters, maybe it doesn't.
The media is against all of them, depending on which media you read, because it's WWE, and it's like the faces and the heels, and you know, which team are you voting for?
That is a good point. Some, you know, like in Christian TV, it was all like, God is telling me, and he told me in a dream last night that we have to vote for Trump. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, on God TV, that's a real channel.
It's really called
hearing.
God TV?
Yeah.
I thought you were just calling it that.
No, there is a channel called God TV, but I
don't think we have that up here.
I haven't had cable for a while. This is like something that you could get anywhere. It has
really? Okay.
The 700 Club. It's these like old people. One of them died last year, and they give like the news. Well, there's just like all kinds of televangelist people on this channel, but it's
and
not
they were
just
like,
God TV either.
You have to vote for Donald Trump.
Yes.
God told me. Jesus Christ came to me last night and said to vote for Donald Trump.
Buy a MAGA hat.
They'll really say stuff like, God wants to help the United States, but we have to keep praying, and we have to keep praying for Donald Trump to win because bad things are going to happen if Hillary wins. I'm not even joking at all. It's terrible. So, like, yeah, what you said, depending on what media you're looking at, it's
even
not
God
just,
TV
like,
is political. I mean, like, this is... You would think that religion would be not political.
Which was a thing,
right?
Religion's totally political.
Yeah.
Well,
they're the first politics that you learn as a little kid.
Actually, yeah, that's a great point.
I agree that it is political, whether they want to say it is or not. But when I was a kid, it was so much more of a faux pas or whatever for a preacher to talk about who you should vote for. And I was talking about this with a friend in Keene who is Christian, and he said, ever since Trump, it was the first time when it was just like, oh, we're going to talk about
Yeah, it seems inappropriate.
politics. It is inappropriate. I never heard that in church growing up. You need to vote for George Bush. I didn't hear that.
Also, you weren't supposed to talk about who you were voting for at Thanksgiving. You know, and now it's like your Facebook profile. You know what I mean? So
yeah, things
have changed a little bit, yeah.
Civil War-ish. What do you think? 603-283-6160. Did God tell you to vote for Trump? 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Anyone can publish on the internet, but not everyone is publishing material suited for online reading. According to the Yahoo Style Guide, it cautions that internet content has a few seconds, 3 or less, to encourage people to read more, to take action, or navigate to another one of your pages. So make it easy for readers to pick and choose. Isn't that the way you poke around online? Use short words, short sentences, short paragraphs, bulleted lists, and short pages. Front load what you write, putting the most important information at the beginning of headlines and paragraphs and sentences. Same goes for your keywords, what someone would likely type into the search box on Yahoo or Google. For more tips on communicating better online or in a job interview or everyday life, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
Eleutheromania, the insatiable desire for freedom. It's the new 3-song heavy metal EP from Captain Kickass. Available now on your favorite music app or get it directly from CaptainKickass.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has left Israel after reaffirming support for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and promising $100 million of aid for Palestinians in Gaza. He backed the Israeli claim that Palestinian militants were responsible for the explosion at a Gaza hospital that killed an estimated 500 people. Biden also said that he'd secured a commitment from Israel to allow food and water in through the Gaza border crossing with Egypt. And the US president gave his rock-solid support to the Israeli Prime Minister. FSN's Sarah Coates reports from Tel Aviv.
A real whirlwind crisis trip for the US president, coming at a time that the US is once again reaffirming its support for Israel, and while this region is really teetering on the brink. Before boarding Air Force One, coming out to say that we will not stand by and do nothing again. He also mentioned the US's support in terms of military aid, saying that the US has sent many resources like aircraft carriers. He also leveled a warning at other regional players. We're talking namely here about Iran and Hezbollah, saying, if you're thinking about attacking Israel, the message remains the same as it has this past week. Don't.
Meanwhile, the United States has vetoed a United Nations resolution on escalations in Gaza. The UN Security Council rejected a draft text put forward by Brazil calling for humanitarian pauses in fighting between Israel and Hamas. FSN's Sally Patterson reports from UN headquarters in New York.
12 in favour, 2 abstentions, and the United States against. The draft UN resolution condemned all violence and hostilities against civilians and called for the immediate release of hostages being held in Gaza. But both the US and the United Kingdom said it needed to be clearer on Israel's right to self-defense. Meanwhile, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire.
US Congressman Jim Jordan has failed for the second time to win enough votes to become Speaker of the House of Representatives, leaving the heart of American democracy in a state of paralysis. FSN's Benji Hire reports from Washington.
It was not the day of triumph that Jim Jordan had hoped for. Congress's lower chamber remains dysfunctional, rudderless, with huge implications at home and abroad. Without someone wielding the gavel, legislation, including on aid for Israel, simply can't get passed by lawmakers. Speaker-designate Jordan could keep fighting, though the maths isn't in his favour. Republicans may have to look for another, more moderate candidate to coalesce around to fill what Congressman Ken Buck describes as the worst job in America.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. If you are still a user of the platform we all still call Twitter, you cannot fail to have noticed that over the last few days it has become a font of misinformation about the crisis in the Middle East. Videos that purport to show things that they do not, knee-jerk reactions to events long before the actual occurrences have even been verified. A haven for hate speech, with mature, sensitive debate now completely absent. All of this has taken place under the leadership of Elon Musk, according to Twitter's former head of news, Vivian Schiller. She is now the executive director of the Aspen Institute.
Look, Twitter was never perfect. Without a doubt, there were always problems, but it wasn't, frankly, the sort of the cesspool that it is today under the name X and under the leadership of Elon Musk. And this is a moment when we need it. It was, for many of us, a source of news. You have to always bring your discernment to it, of course. But now it's almost unusable, and worse, it is actually propagating. And Elon Musk himself is making recommendations for people to follow known bad actors. And yes, it does play right into the hands of of those who want to get those horrible images out there.
The European Union has launched a probe of the role the platform is playing spreading misinformation about events in the Middle East. The US government has not. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, US President Joe Biden has left Israel after reaffirming support for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and promising $100 million of aid for Palestinians in Gaza. The United States has vetoed a United Nations Security Council resolution aimed at ending escalations in Gaza. And US Congressman Jim Jordan has failed for a second time to win enough votes to become Speaker of the House of Representatives. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
The Surgeon General warns teens the Cinnamon Challenge is not for pussies. Taylor Swift is now dating the Watertown boat, and a middle-aged funeral director buys a flashy red hearse. We pity your pathetic dependence on this for your weekly news, but here we go anyway. This is the Onion Week in Review. A study released this week by the National Institutes of Health confirmed that for the 25th straight year, wolf attacks remain the leading cause of death in the United States. The Human Health Agency's findings confirmed that being viciously killed by a ravenous wolf claimed the lives of over 800,000 Americans last year alone, with researchers adding that one person in the United States dies every 40 seconds from a violent wolf attack.
The mortality rate associated with wolf attacks vastly outstrips the death tolls of cancer, stroke, and chronic respiratory disease. People should know that anyone... Oh, Jesus, no.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Lori, and Nikki.
And we have some callers on the line, so I'm going to go straight into the callers. Caller, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hi, this is Zephan.
Oh, hey, Zephan.
Hey, Zephan, what's up?
Not much. I just am calling to talk about, over the past couple weeks, it seems like everyone's been focusing on all of the negative stuff that's being done by governments in Israel and the Middle East and all of that. So I wanted to talk about something positive that's being done at this time, which is there's this really cool project called Crypto Aid Israel. It's a nonprofit that allows for people that are crypto enthusiasts to not use the U.S. dollar to donate to people that are in need of it. So 100% of the proceeds go to support rebuilding South Israel that has been destroyed by bombs and such, aid for the families killed and captured, and aid for the families of soldiers and first responders. So it's just a way for you to use non-murder dollars that basically fueled this whole thing. I mean, like the whole thing is really boils down to the military-industrial complex making a quick buck. That's what it always comes down to. So you can opt out of that while also directly helping people, because I'm always skeptical of these like big NGOs and saying that they'll do what they say that they'll do, but I looked into this organization and it seems pretty legit, and best of all, like it's crypto, and the government doesn't get a cut. It just goes to help people that are just the victims in all of this, like that, who I think have mostly been overlooked because everybody is, digging their heels in whatever political camp they want to, which is fine, but, there are consequences to that.
Yeah, I did want to ask you, like, if you had vetted it yourself, because that's just what I always think about these things, like whether it's Kony 2012, if you guys remember that.
Oh,
or
yeah, that was a big one.
just like tons of things, like even when Haiti had an earthquake in 2010, I think it was, there were so many things where you're giving money to them just kind of without paying much attention, and then, oh, it turns out that it was going to something really bad. I don't remember any details, but I know people can do their own research, but what did you find out as far as that goes for this one?
I did quite a bit of digging on this because, you know, I saw that Hamas was also using crypto, so I was like, okay, let me make sure I'm not accidentally donating to Hamas.
Oh my God.
But like, there were several different websites that talked about this in depth, and it has the support of like of tons of different crypto organizations, like companies and like nonprofit groups. So it's sort of like a groundswell of like institutional support around this, which usually I'm also skeptical of.
Yeah.
But I'm much less skeptical of institutional crypto than I am of institutional basically anything else.
And that makes sense.
But it is an amazing option for people who want to do something. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this here, because you're right, there has been so much negativity. And even like depending on what, you know, social media accounts you follow. I mean, I've opened my Instagram a few times in the past couple of weeks to like really horrific things that I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this got past whatever AI is flagging things, like some really like graphic, horrific things. And, you know, everybody's aggressively taking a side. You know, it's just, it's how it usually is with war. And obviously this is a terrible, awful thing that's happening. But I don't think we need to get like sucked into all of the negativity in the fear mongering.
In the division.
In the division, yeah. And that's a huge thing, yeah.
Like now the Western world versus Muslims, just because a group called Hamas did something. I think the most important
like they're
thing...
terrorists. Like, and I think to group entire groups of people because of, you know, some literal terrorists. I mean, I just think the whole thing is absolutely awful. So anything positive and productive that can be done to help.
Specifically the people who have been caught up in these government wars.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you for sharing that, Zephin.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just so tragic that part has been overlooked. Because I met quite a few people during Porkfest that are from Israel, and they've been talking to me, and it's just like, you know, you people don't think about it in the retrospect of like, these are like people's actual lives, you know, that are actually being impacted. Like in America, we don't really know what it's like to hear a bomb, you know, go off, and like consistently, but like there, it's just a fact of life. Like, and like, I'm not even trying to be like, oh yeah, like in Israel, they're the only ones dealing with it. Like, no, obviously, people living in the Gaza Strip are also experiencing.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a huge thing in the Middle East in general. I mean, there is constant war, constant.
Yep.
So anyone that really lives in that area, I mean, a lot of people that live in, like you said, like the Western world, like America, and even, you know, like most of, you know, Western Europe. I mean, like, yeah, we're not used to this sort of stuff, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and we have the US dollar to thank for it, quite frankly. And so what I really like about this is that it actually helps people, like, in both ways, because when you're donating dollars to like help somebody, you're kind of just recycling the like the destruction that will like continue as a result of you using their murder money.
Yep.
So like to be able to like use a peaceful means of exchange to facilitate even more peace, I think it's just great. Like I'm in favor. I love compounding things. Like you know, like for example, right now I'm like driving in the car and talking to you guys at the same time. I like to be efficient. and like I like being efficient in my transactions as well. So if I can foster peace while also fostering peace, like, why not do that? So it's, once again, guys, it's CryptoAid, Israel.com. I vetted it pretty extensively. I would love to be disproven, but like, you know, it seems pretty good. So.
Yeah, I mean, if any of our listeners, you know, have any, you know, opposing information about this organization or the, you know, this program, they're more than welcome to call in and disagree with you or whatever. But
I definitely don't want to like promote something that would be doing the opposite of what these people who are giving want to do. So that's just the only reason I asked Zephin that question. But it sounds like a really great thing. I'm all for, you know, helping the people who are affected by government wars, no matter what side they're on. They didn't start this, and his point about not just further empowering the dollar when the government's, you know, they're not giving money to both sides. Did you know about this? It's a little weird. The United States government.
They kind of are. It's a little complicated. So Iran basically had $9 billion unfrozen by the U.S. government, which sort of allowed for Hamas to get a lot of capital for weaponry, and then, you know, there was the whole Afghanistan situation that made it so that a ton of U.S. weaponry was left in the Middle East, a lot of it going back to Hamas. So even if it's not direct foreign aid, which again, there's also direct foreign aid and humanitarian aid, which Hamas uses to buy rockets, because that's what happens when you give a terrorist organization money. Like, shocker, they don't use it to buy bandages and food. They use it to buy bombs and bullets. But that being said, like this, I think that this is a way of getting around it. And one other thing that I would recommend people do is that even if they don't have money or crypto, I guess specifically, to donate to this project, something else that's super helpful would be if you could go onto their website and then look at their info email. It's like info@cryptoaidisrael.com or something. Double check. And email them and ask them to offer more cryptocurrencies, because at the moment they only offer Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I'd like to at least see, you know, Monero, Bitcoin Cash, Dash, like just some of these other currencies that people actually use as currencies, you know, not just like things
Digital
that
gold.
they never spend because the fees are so bloody high. I mean, the transaction for me for the $50 donation or whatever was like 30 cents, but that's because it was a good day to donate. But 30 cents is still way too high, in my opinion, for a crypto transaction, especially when there's so many other options out there.
It really is. Thank you so much. It's a good time for me to bring up Dash, because Dash transactions are always less than a penny. And that's why we on Free Talk Live think that it's really a good cryptocurrency to use. So this hour of this hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by the treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges including the decentralized Maya protocol and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn more about Dash. Dash.org. I just think a 30-cent transaction is crazy. Even if that doesn't sound like a lot, it's the fact that...
less than Bitcoin, right?
That's what Bitcoin has, right? Or I think that's what he was saying, that his Bitcoin one was 30 cents. I guess I didn't hear if he said Bitcoin or Bitcoin
Yeah,
Cash.
I guess it depends what amount you're sending, right?
Either way, it's like,
And how
this
you're
should be
sending it.
something that you spend instead of the dollar. Like, today I bought a 75-cent piece of chocolate. It's not that common, but imagine if I used Bitcoin and it was $1.50 5 cents. It would
It
just
makes
be
people
silly.
not want to use it.
Yeah.
It makes it impossible to use it for day-to-day transactions, right? Like when I use cash, I don't have to pay a fee. Or I mean like tax, but that's a completely different monster. But like when I buy something on my credit card, I don't have to do that. So it's nice that Dash provides a crypto that is actually usable day to day.
Yeah, and the person accepting your credit card does have to pay a fee, which sucks.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
So, even for the people selling things, they wouldn't be
And-
paying a fee on these transactions.
And I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of stores, especially like mom and pop stores, I think the credit card fees have gone up because now they're, passing it back to the person buying or using the credit card rather, and they're making them cover the fees. And I've seen
noticed
that
that a lot.
a lot more lately, which I actually kind of like because one, why do businesses have to eat
Right.
those credit card fees?
I think
And
that a
two,
lot.
people should be encouraged to use cash or other forms of payment.
Well, we're moving back on to the calls. We have an unscreened caller. Unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hello. Not much. I was just listening now. Thank you guys for supporting, the innocent.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you so much for that. Yeah, the people who are just living their lives and caught up in this war, I guess it is now in Israel. They're innocent people who don't deserve what's happening to them, and yeah, I'm always going to support the people over the government.
Yeah, absolutely. It is kind of gross how people are even picking a side.
Yeah,
in
that's true.
something like this, you know what I mean? Like both sides are wrong. Both sides are government. And it's interesting to see a lot of like freedom loving people, like libertarians, picking either Israel, like people, I see a lot of people picking both sides. And I think both sides are wrong. And there was something I wanted to read earlier, but I just didn't get the chance to, but something, a post I found that I actually thought I was going to get a lot of hate for posting this on social media. And a lot of people were very receptive to it. Not like I mind making waves, even if I did get hate. I'm going to post it regardless. But I do not stand with Israel. I do not stand with Hamas. I do not stand with Ukraine. I do not stand with Russia. I stand with the individuals who are held hostage by government. And that is exactly what is happening here. This is government, governments attacking other governments, but really governments attacking individuals, and there are a lot of civilian casualties, especially with the conflict that's going on in Israel, in the Gaza Strip, in Palestine. There are a lot of civilian casualties.
That's why I find it so weird when people are like, oh, there's a war here that, in Israel, and we're going to now hate people from Israel.
Yeah,
It's,
like
it's
what
not
did
the
what
people
did,
there. Do
yeah.
you agree with what your government does? Do you agree with what your neighbor does? Like,
Yeah,
do you
like
agree
what
with
did their
everybody
real,
around you?
Yeah, like real Israeli people, they're innocent. You know what I mean?
They're
like
just individuals.
It's the military people and it's the government officials, just like every single war, just like World War II, just like World War I. These are the people in power. These are politicians. These are governments.
Making decisions for everyone.
Exactly. And it's always wrong.
Hamas, I mean, it's not a government, but it's the same exact thing. It's a gang of people who have grabbed the most power in an area, and they're causing really bad things happen to not only the people in Israel, since they bombed them, but also, the power being turned off in the Gaza Strip and the water being turned off, and people can't even go to the hospital and get saved when they're getting hit by bombs right now because Israel, the government, is turning off the water supplies. So like
in bombing
targeting
and
hospitals.
telling people to flee and then bombing the exit.
Wow, that's terrible.
I mean, like, so that's why like a lot of people are standing with Israel simply because of Hamas. But like we just said, Hamas does not represent all of Palestine. And Israel is just as guilty in this whole conflict. And, I can't take either government side.
Right. Me either. And I've always said the same thing about Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, absolutely.
I only care about the innocent people getting caught up in this and, getting drafted to be in this war for Zelensky and Putin.
But absolutely. And I think it is very different with Israel because it makes it, like, it turns it into a religious war, right? So, like, all of, like, the very religious people that makes them more likely to pick a side. And a lot of people are like, this is the holy war. I mean, what was this last Wednesday or last Saturday or last Sunday? I mean, like so many people were calling in like, no, you don't have to worry. This is all God's doing. Like people were making it so religious.
Wow.
And I'm like, this has nothing to do with the Bible.
My God,
this has
wouldn't do
nothing
that.
to do with any holy book. This has nothing to do with religion. This has nothing to do with God. Or maybe it does have something to do with religion, whatever. But this is people being murdered. Like you cannot justify this with your religion.
Right.
You can't. Stop trying to. Like this is not a good thing. And if your God wants this to happen, then maybe, you should take a deeper look at your religion and whether it is so peaceful and so loving.
Right. I agree.
Organized religion is just another control method.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, they tell you from a young age, if you don't agree with everything that we say and do, you're going to hell or
There's a fear-mongering, right?
Wherever
Yeah.
the thing is. And so, you grow up like that and you get brainwashed into just going along with it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's definitely one of those things we were talking about at the beginning, and at the beginning of the show with Mark Passio about ways to control human beings' minds. It's kind of a trap, and I'm not just saying if you believe in a spiritual reality. I do. So it's not about that.
It's different. It's like Lori said. It's the organized.
Right.
And I don't even want to pretend like all organized religion is always bad. I've said this on the show before. If you can get good things out of it, then that's great. But I think like the collectivism aspect of it, if you can't separate yourself from that religion and from that group of people and look at things objectively as an individual and make your own decisions based on what is ethical and what is right and like the real peaceful, loving thing to do, then no, I don't think that's positive. I don't think that's a positive thing. And if you're only supporting war and you're only supporting Israel or Palestine or whatever because of your religion, like that's kind of, I think that's negative.
Yeah. I mean, you should have your own ability to know what's right and wrong. And if your pastor is telling you something that deep inside is not right, then you should be able to change your mind,
Yeah, absolutely. Without being shamed and without being like fear-mongered. You're going to go to hell. God's not going to accept you into his loving arms in the afterlife. That's weird.
And that's the worst part is like this happens to children who don't have the ability to like think at this level yet.
Yeah, and that was, I didn't grow up very religious, but we did go to church a little bit, and I did grow up like Catholic, and then we changed into Lutheran, whatever, like different forms. But and my sister had the same experience as well. Like we did not grow up super religious. We didn't even go to church a lot. But still, when I started to discover a different form of spirituality within myself, and I started to recognize, no, like a lot of the thing, like I don't really agree with like a lot of like Christianity and a lot of those organized religions. Like once that started to not make sense to me anymore, I still held on to it out of fear of going to hell. Because even as someone who grew up not very religious, that was the one thing that stuck, that fear mongering as a child. And it was just like, I don't actually believe in this, but I have to pretend I do because what if?
Yeah.
That like, what if that lingers? And I think that lingers for a lot of people into their adult life. And they're almost like not able to think rationally and form their own beliefs and their own opinions because of that.
Yeah, fear keeps people from opening their mind at all about any subject, so I would definitely agree. We have another caller on the line. We have Tim from Florida. Tim, what's on your mind?
Oh, I've got so much on my mind. Well, collectivism, you mentioned, and I'm thinking of, how service in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, it's obligatory not only for all Israeli citizens, but it's also obligatory for all permanent residents of Israel, even if they are not Israeli citizens.
Oh, wow. I think I did hear that before, that even if you go immigrate to Israel, well, you still have to sign up for like a year. You can stay on the line, by the way, Tim, if you have more to say. But yeah, you have to do a year of being in the IDF or something, Israeli Defense Force in Israel if you move there. So yeah, that's slavery. That's all it is. Controlling other people and forcing them to be in your military, even if they were born there or what, it doesn't matter. Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 is the number to get on with us. More coming up.
Free Talk Live, the show where anyone can call about whatever they want. And we do mean anyone.
Now, you also said in another video that the moon is an iPod. Can you explain that one?
I believe the moon, the reason why it turns the color that it does is because it fills up with the humidity and water from the transmission of electrons or electricity. I believe that we're upside down being pulled by magnets right now. The actual ocean is in the sky, and they're reserving that sky. The reason we have thunder and lightning is because of the shock waves that go through the two skies up above. Otherwise, where's the thunder and lightning going to come? Because there's no way the clouds are that thick, or the planes wouldn't be able to go through it.
Have
it wouldn't
you
make
ever
any
been
sense.
abducted by aliens?
No. Wait a second. Hold on a second. I think so. 45 minutes every single night.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has left Israel after reaffirming support for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and promising $100 million of aid for Palestinians in Gaza. He backed the Israeli claim that Palestinian militants were responsible for the explosion at a Gaza hospital that killed an estimated 500 people. Biden also said that he'd secured a commitment from Israel to allow food and water in through the Gaza border crossing with Egypt. And the US president gave his rock-solid support to the Israeli Prime Minister. FSN's Sarah Coates reports from Tel Aviv.
A real whirlwind crisis trip for the US president, coming at a time that the US is once again reaffirming its support for Israel, and while this region is really teetering on the brink. Before boarding Air Force One, coming out to say that we will not stand by and do nothing again. He also mentioned the US's support in terms of military aid, saying that the US has sent many resources like aircraft carriers. He also leveled a warning at other regional players. We're talking namely here about Iran and Hezbollah, saying, if you're thinking about attacking Israel, the message remains the same as it has this past week. Don't.
Meanwhile, the United States has vetoed a United Nations resolution on escalations in Gaza. The UN Security Council rejected a draft text put forward by Brazil calling for humanitarian pauses in fighting between Israel and Hamas. FSN's Sally Patterson reports from UN headquarters in New York.
12 in favour, 2 abstentions, and the United States against. The draft UN resolution condemned all violence and hostilities against civilians and called for the immediate release of hostages being held in Gaza. But both the US and the United Kingdom said it needed to be clearer on Israel's right to self-defense. Meanwhile, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire.
US Congressman Jim Jordan has failed for the second time to win enough votes to become Speaker of the House of Representatives, leaving the heart of American democracy in a state of paralysis. FSN's Benji Hire reports from Washington.
It was not the day of triumph that Jim Jordan had hoped for. Congress's lower chamber remains dysfunctional, rudderless, with huge implications at home and abroad. Without someone wielding the gavel, legislation, including on aid for Israel, simply can't get passed by lawmakers. Speaker-designate Jordan could keep fighting, though the maths isn't in his favour. Republicans may have to look for another, more moderate candidate to coalesce around to fill what Congressman Ken Buck describes as the worst job in America.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160 is the phone number to get in on the conversation. Bring up whatever you want. It's up to you because it's Free Talk Live. We've been having a pretty lively conversation, well, a bunch of them tonight. And whatever you want to bring up, it's up to you. 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's me, Bonnie,
Lori,
and Nikki.
And I'm just going to get right into you guys' phone calls and thoughts. We have Tim from Florida. I'm not sure which one it is because it looks like there's two now. Tim?
Yeah, sorry about that. Can you hear
it's
me?
fine. Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, something happened on the other line. I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll drop
I just wanted to follow up that so there was a hospital in the Gaza Strip that was bombed, and from what I can tell, I think it's the same hospital that's being described in the news segment on the break, and basically the state of Israel is saying that Hamas did it. But everyone in Gaza is saying that Israel did it. And when I say that, I'm just saying that people like on Twitter and stuff, uploading video feeds and stuff. And now, you notice I said it's a Baptist hospital. I didn't say it's a Muslim hospital. And I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that, number one, there are Arab Jews that live in Gaza, and there are Arab Christians that live in Gaza.
I never really heard that before. Honestly, I didn't know. I just figured they wouldn't live there.
They're a very small percentage. Yeah, they're a very small percentage. And part of the reason is over time they've been driven out of Palestine. So when I lived in California, for example, on my block there was actually a family of Palestinians that owned 3 businesses. They owned an Italian restaurant, a convenience store, and a hamburger joint. And yeah, they were always really nice, and if I recall, they were Christians, not Muslims, But a lot of the Christians that originated in Palestine, they went abroad.
So they just like left and came to America because they were in Palestine and they had to leave. Well, that's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought much about it because a lot of people, they're like, well, I'm Jewish, so of course I support Israel, but that doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? If you support a government bombing an area that also has Jews in it. But, I mean, You just shouldn't support murder, and that's a better place to start from.
Well, and another thing is the fact that you have these hostages, and even on the news break, that the other day, maybe it was a few days ago, they said basically that Israel was bombing Palestine, and they still didn't know where the hostages were. Oh, okay, so you don't know where the hostages are, but you're carpet bombing Palestine. Wow, that's really smart.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. See, honestly, it's a little hard for me to keep up with every single detail of this because I
don't
feel
even
like
want to.
A lot of it could just be like fake stuff that's intended to get people angry. I hate to say it, but it happens.
The propaganda, that's war propaganda is absolutely real, and we're even seeing a lot of that. I mean, it's
like the ghost of Kiev in Ukraine. That was fake.
But even as simple as just people posting stuff on Facebook and, you're changing your, how people were changing their profile pictures to the Ukrainian flag. Who was the first person to do that? Does anybody know? Because thousands of people were doing it, right? So somebody, and to me, I don't want to be everything's a conspiracy, but it really does feel that way.
Well, there are bots all over the internet.
And a lot of this stuff is proven. And again, going back to what we were talking about in the very first segment of the show, where there's the real truth and then there's what you believe and your biases. And if you try to get to the root of the real truth, are there bots on Facebook? Is this, is the Ukrainian flag profile picture? Is that, is supporting this one side? Is that all war propaganda? If you try to dive into that and get to the root of that and the truth, people will be like, oh, no, you can't go against the narrative.
Right.
You're a racist, or you're this, or you're that. We're going to ostracize you because you don't believe in what we're believing in.
Well, it's weird, too, because it's like a trend.
Yeah.
People post this picture, like Becky who's selling Scentsy on Facebook and just posting silly TikToks. You don't care.
Yeah, don't pretend like you care. Yeah, exactly. But they have to,
but
or
it's
else
trendy, or else you'll be looked at like you're not part of the group anymore.
Yeah. Or the Black Lives Matter thing. I mean, there's all of those things where, especially if you were a business owner, a small, anything, if you didn't change your profile to the black, they did a black square for on Instagram or whatever, or if you don't say that you're an anti-racist in your profile, people will boycott you and you will get canceled, and it happens to like random people.
You're not virtue signaling hard enough.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
and it's almost difficult to even know. It's like randomly selected, like which celebrity is going to be canceled for something they said 10 years ago today, and it's all of this stuff. I mean, it's not necessarily connected to the war in Ukraine or to the war in Israel, but all of that perpetuates what is happening here.
And if you are just a person who wants to get to the truth of the matter of whatever you're investigating, well, you got to get used to sometimes being looked at in an unpopular light, and sometimes, the complete opposite. In 2016, I was like a Facebook warrior, like always posting about like the cops are really bad.
Yeah.
And I said we should abolish the police on Facebook. And this girl called me a racist for that in 2016. Now, fast forward 2020, it would be like, thank you for standing with solidarity. It doesn't even make any sense. She said,
exactly.
You have made a confused face. She said I was racist because she was a girl that worked at the same bank I used to work at in 2016. And she was like, I don't remember what type of native, but she's a native of Alaska. And I don't want to say the wrong one if I'm wrong. And she was saying like, well, people in my community, like we don't have that much money. You think we have the money to hire our own security, as if it has anything to do with race, like the amount of money you have doesn't have to do with race. And second of all, if you're not being taxed for paying for the police, like being forced to pay for the police, you'd have a little bit more money to possibly, buy yourself a gun or do whatever else you wanted to do to keep yourself safe that's currently illegal right now.
Yeah, but people can't think that hard.
No. But we do have more people on the call. Thank you, Tim from Florida, for the call. Unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hello. I was calling earlier, but then I didn't have anything to talk about. But now I have a lot to talk about. It was weird because I couldn't.
What's your name?
My name is. I'm in the chat right now. You have rights, cops have duties. Is my YouTube handle.
Okay.
But I had some stuff to talk about, but I couldn't tell the temperature of the room, and I said thank you for standing up for the innocent. And yeah, there are innocent on both sides, but I really do believe that Israel is an oppressive people that are trying to take people and force apartheid. That's the ideas of building walls, separate nations, and they're the number one model for that around the world right now at this time that we speak of, and until the dehumanizing border wall at the United States border gets built, which is only a wall to keep us in. There's some people in chat. There's a guy, Johnny Be Good, I believe, in chat talking about how he wishes he had a spot on a reservation instead of having to live the life he's living now. And I asked him if he's ever lived on a reservation, and he said no. And I was going to tell him, okay, good, have fun being forced to, the only girls around you are your cousins.
Have you lived on a reservation? Just curious. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, I was raised on Yamba Shoshone Native American Reservation in Nevada.
Oh.
I was adopted at 12 years old. I was a white boy kid. They call me Divo. Divo is basically Shoshone for white devil.
Oh my gosh.
They call me that affectionately to
That's
see
pretty
what
funny,
kind
honestly.
of what kind of person I am. I'm a young white male that they invited onto their ranch on a reservation in the middle of the mountains to live with them and help them and stuff. But I was a really good helper. They always called me I will.
About how ignorant that comment is you're bringing up is the idea that if he would rather.
I know what you're saying, that it sounds ignorant and everything, but listen.
Oh no, not you. Sorry, I didn't mean you. Hold on, I'm gonna put you on hold really fast. I just want to get my thought out. The thing that's ignorant about the comment he was responding to is people act like the natives are ungrateful because
they're taken care of or whatever.
Yeah, they get a small amount of money each day. They've been completely just completely like ripped away from their old knowledge and heritage via like the schools that they used to put them through in the 1800s, and
they still do that.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, this has been happening for hundreds of
What do
years
you mean?
since
Like
the colonization of the United States, and I think
The
it's
residential schools.
Oh, they still have?
I think that there's some still. I know that there was some like up until
in
the
Canada
80s and
there
90s.
are at
I
least.
think in Canada,
yeah,
there's still
absolutely.
residential schools.
I mean, like they say, it was just as bad in Canada as it was in the United
Yeah.
States.
And just
it's
being-
still going on. Yeah.
Given money doesn't like solve every single part of your life. It actually really takes away the person's spirit and wanting to do better, and it's a huge reason why people in many different places in America do worse because of all the welfare that gets pumped into this area. So cops have duties. What else is on your mind?
Can I say something? Sorry, I was saying yes. Those are awesome. Thank you, ladies. The thing about it is that the reservations are exactly internment camps. They are apartheid Israel. They are even to this day, like you guys brought up the money aspect of it, that money can't buy you happiness because of all the stuff they've been taken from them. But the money aspect of the United States government shadows the people's minds and thinks, oh, these people are just freeloaders or something. It's like, no, they on the reservation, it was disgusting because they tell these people, it's like I get called sovereign citizen all the time for my belief in knowing the law. But I always tell people, I say, no, I have the right to be sovereign, and I have also a right to not be a United States citizen. And they call the Native American reservation a sovereign nation. Yet if you ever have been on a reservation for any length of period of time, there's this thing called the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which they're not even Indians. They're Native American. They don't want to be called Indian. They never was called Indian before in their lives back in the day. Indian is a white man's oppressive term. And so there's this Bureau of Indian Affairs that takes over their entire life. They show up from time to time to tell them how to live in their house, to tell them what they can have on their yard. It's basically an overgrown homeowners association, and the sovereign nation does not exist. They do not just get paid free money to just sit around. No, they have to perform. It's pure slavery.
That's
and on top of it, yeah, they have to perform for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. If they do not fall in line, it's like Child Protective Services. They tell you to clean your living room, and then you show them how good you can clean your living room, but then they say, no, you can't see your kid until you clean your kitchen.
Yeah, there's always something.
Kitchen.
They're always moving the bar.
Yes, you have to clean the kitchen how we want you to clean the kitchen. And pretty soon it's not your child, it's not your kitchen, it's not your life. You're just an existence on this earth, meaningless and just and nothing. Rampant alcohol abuse on Native American reservations is a given, not because they love to drink alcohol, but because what are you supposed to do when you don't own your house, you don't own your children, you don't own your life, and then you get talked crap about because you're inbreeding with your cousin because your cousin's the only female available on the reservation.
Well, thank you so much for the call. Cops have duties. That was super enlightening. And absolutely terrible. I find new reasons to hate the United States government every single day. And Jesus, I don't know. It just sounds. I understand why somebody would turn to alcoholism. Like he said, if you don't own your life, it's depressing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like it perpetuates this sense of hopelessness. And I think, I mean, everything he was saying was absolutely true. And this is just stuff I hear just from being, on the, the obscure sides of the internet, right? And just like different research that I've done. And I don't think it is common knowledge, especially for people living on like the East Coast, because the Trail of Tears and all of these people were like exiled to the western side of the United States. So we don't even really have, I don't even really know any natives, really, because I guess you could say, I mean, my family is like historically native from like hundreds of years ago in Mexico, right? So like, but very different, like not like actual real Native American people.
Well, I grew up in, or 5 years of my life I spent in Utah, and I finished high school there. But the thing about it is, these people that lived right outside of the military base that I lived on a reservation, and honestly, I can never remember. Oh, it's Goshu Indians, Goshu natives. Sometimes I am not used to saying natives because it's just like I always said Indian as a kid, but it doesn't make any sense to call people Indian just because Christopher Columbus thought they were
exactly
Indians.
It's an incorrect term. I always said Native Americans. That's what I was taught in the public schools that I went to.
To me, that didn't even pop up until I was like a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we were doing that on the East Coast in like the early 2000s, I guess. But it was always like, if you said Indian, it was like not PC. But a lot of older folks, like my mom always says Indians, and I'm always correcting her. Not even just because I'm like, Mom, stop being racist. It's just incorrect. But the Indians are from India. You know what I mean?
Right. That's the thing that made me stop doing it. I was like, it doesn't even make sense. But
yeah, exactly.
The thing about it is these people that lived, I'm not going to collectivize all of them. There was like tons of people that lived on this reservation off of Dugway Proving Ground, Utah. They were just always very happy and nice. And they didn't want to talk about stuff like that. Like, I just feel like I would have never learned this stuff because, they never talked about stuff like this. Like, I even one time kind of embarrassed myself because I found out from a 26-year-old girl that was working with me and I was 18 that she had a really crazy spiritual encounter. Maybe I shouldn't even say what it is. In fact, I don't even like saying the word, but with something that's sort of like evil. And I
know what you're talking about. Yeah,
I worked with her mom later, and I was like, so your daughter was telling me this when I worked with her at the other store, like, and she was like, really, like 100%, we don't talk about that. Like, I don't know why my daughter
So do you think maybe like the experience you had was due to a certain sense of privacy that they have?
Yeah, and just like mistrust.
Trying to maintain honor, right? Yeah, so you're like the white girl from the military ground, like, like kind of like an outsider, right? And I'm not trying to say this to be offensive either. It's just kind of like the facts, right?
Right.
Especially if you're kind of segregated in a way on these reservations. It's like, okay, so for hundreds of years, my people have been, enslaved and completely, have like everything stripped from us by the white colonizers that came in and, created the United States of America and, did all these awful atrocities to these people. So like after hundreds of years of that, even like innocent individuals that are just also victims of the United States government, it is hard to
like
kind
relate.
of trust. Yeah, to relate, but like also to trust outsiders. It's like, okay, like these are the people I know. This is safe. I know these people aren't going to do anything to harm me or whatever. So it does make sense, like unless somebody was living on the reservation and was kind of like an insider, why you would maybe not even know this information, because like the honor and the pride aspect of it.
And we were really friendly in general. Like, she was a very nice lady. And I mean, every single person from the reservation that I met while I lived there was like really nice to you. It's not that it was like they hate white people or anything like that.
But you have to, there has to be like a certain level of trust before you're going to
talk about things like that with her.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Like it that's like a next level of friendship and trust, So I guess that's what I meant by it. But also recently I learned, and I don't know if this is true, but I learned that like the price of groceries and the price of goods on certain Native American reservations are like astronomical.
Yeah, I saw a picture like that once. And I was
I saw, it was like on Instagram, like a thread of photos. And like, again, that was something I had no clue about.
Government price control is so crazy. So it's they're getting all this money, quote unquote. It's really not that much.
No, and it doesn't seem like that's, like, from my perspective, I'm like, I wouldn't think that these are privileged people. Like, this seems like they have been
traumatized.
Yeah, and just completely taken advantage of. And I want to use the word disrespected, but it's so much worse than that. Like, just the U.S. government has been wronging these people for so long, and it's like giving them casinos and money, like that's not going to fix what, like, they need freedom. They, you know, and it's just like, how do you reconcile that? It's just, it's a huge issue, and I'm really glad the caller called in, and
it was really interesting.
I'm glad we're having this conversation because, like, obviously, like, this isn't a conversation we would normally have on this show.
Yes.
And that's, you know, the beauty of Free Talk Live and a caller-driven show is because we have conversations like this, and it can help us to open our minds as well.
And I titled the show tonight, "Is Freedom of Speech Still Legal?" Because freedom of speech is something really important to us here on Free Talk Live for exactly the reasons Nikki just said. And when we're going to go to break soon, but I'm going to get into this Reason article that makes me question if freedom of speech is even still a thing. This is from Reason.com. It says, Iowa man files a lawsuit after being arrested twice for criticizing the police at a public meeting. And he says, ironically, the actions of the police department have only proven my point. Says officials in a small Iowa town twice arrested a young man for criticizing the police department and saying it violates people's civil rights. Now the town is facing a lawsuit for violating his civil rights, which is, I'm glad that that's happening. I hope they lose. In a federal lawsuit filed Thursday in the U.S. District Court of the Southern District of Iowa, Noah Peterson says the town of Newton violated the First, Fourth, and 14th Amendments when the police chief arrested him for speaking during the public comment period of a city council meeting. Arrested for speaking at a public meeting.
Right.
It's crazy. Peterson is represented by the Institute for Justice. Oh, we keep talking about them. They're just great. A libertarian-leaning public interest law firm. Quote, the mayor and police chief had Noah arrested, jailed, strip-searched, and criminally prosecuted simply because they didn't like what Noah had to say, unquote. And the lawsuit states.
What did they charge him with?
That's what I'm wondering. Because, like, they said it's for speaking, and I'm sure that was the reason, but what did they write down as the reason?
Right.
Because they always have to write something that sounds bad and like he actually did something wrong.
Like something legitimate.
Quote, the suit is filed to vindicate the fundamental right to criticize the government without fear of retaliation and to ensure the constitutional accountability of all government officials, unquote. Peterson was prompted to speak at an October 3rd, 2022 Newton City Council meeting after the release of body cam footage showed Newton officers arresting a college football player, Taven Galanakis. Galanakis was arrested for driving under the influence despite blowing a 0.0 on a breathalyzer. Oh, that happened to me before. And passing roadside sobriety tests. He was taken to the police station for further drug tests, all of which came back negative before eventually being released. And they'll do that. You can blow 0.00 and they will say, yeah, but you smell like alcohol, so we're going to have to take you in. And they're just lying.
Yeah,
you know?
And that's why I had an attorney who specializes in DUIs say to me, and he also has a history as a state trooper, so he's been on both sides of this. And the advice he gave to me was, if you ever get pulled over, even if you think you're sober, never, ever, ever, ever blow in a breathalyzer, because especially if you've been drinking, I mean, that's just like evidence against you. And even if you haven't, even if you think you're going to blow a 0, I mean, they misconstrue everything. So it's like the same thing. It's like, don't talk to cops. You know, if somebody's coming at you, even like, not even just cops, like if anyone who is trying to build a case against you, essentially, so especially cops, just don't say anything. And that's the best thing you can do.
So you blew a 0.0 and they still arrested you?
Yeah, they said that I smelled like alcohol and I didn't. I just didn't. So that's a whole long story. But getting back into this Reason.com article, we're going to talk about the guy who was arrested for freedom of speech. 603-283-6160. We won't arrest you for using your freedom of speech. It's Free Talk Live.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has left Israel after reaffirming support for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and promising $100 million of aid for Palestinians in Gaza. He backed the Israeli claim that Palestinian militants were responsible for the explosion at a Gaza hospital that killed an estimated 500 people. Biden also said that he'd secured a commitment from Israel to allow food and water in through the Gaza border crossing with Egypt. And the US president gave his rock-solid support to the Israeli Prime Minister. FSN's Sarah Coates reports from Tel Aviv.
A real whirlwind crisis trip for the US president, coming at a time that the US is once again reaffirming its support for Israel, and while this region is really teetering on the brink. Before boarding Air Force One, coming out to say that we will not stand by and do nothing again. He also mentioned the US's support in terms of military aid, saying that the US has sent many resources like aircraft carriers. He also leveled a warning at other regional players. We're talking namely here about Iran and Hezbollah, saying, if you're thinking about attacking Israel, the message remains the same as it has this past week. Don't.
Meanwhile, the United States has vetoed a United Nations resolution on escalations in Gaza. The UN Security Council rejected a draft text put forward by Brazil calling for humanitarian pauses in fighting between Israel and Hamas. FSN's Sally Patterson reports from UN headquarters in New York.
12 in favour, 2 abstentions, and the United States against. The draft UN resolution condemned all violence and hostilities against civilians and called for the immediate release of hostages being held in Gaza. But both the US and the United Kingdom said it needed to be clearer on Israel's right to self-defense. Meanwhile, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire.
US Congressman Jim Jordan has failed for the second time to win enough votes to become Speaker of the House of Representatives, leaving the heart of American democracy in a state of paralysis. FSN's Benji High reports from Washington.
It was not the day of triumph that Jim Jordan had hoped for. Congress's lower chamber remains dysfunctional, rudderless, with huge implications at home and abroad. Without someone wielding the gavel, legislation, including on aid for Israel, simply can't get passed by lawmakers. Speaker-designate Jordan could keep fighting, though the maths isn't in his favour. Republicans may have to look for another, more moderate candidate to coalesce around to fill what Congressman Ken Buck describes as the worst job in America.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. If you are still a user of the platform we all still call Twitter, you cannot fail to have noticed that over the last few days it has become a font of misinformation about the crisis in the Middle East. Videos that purport to show things that they do not, knee-jerk reactions to events long before the actual occurrences have even been verified, a haven for hate speech, with mature, sensitive debate now completely absent. All of this has taken place under the leadership of Elon Musk, according to Twitter's former head of news, Vivian Schiller. She is now the executive director of the Aspen Institute.
Look, Twitter was never perfect. Without a doubt, there were always problems, but it wasn't, frankly, the cesspool that it is today under the name X and under the leadership of Elon Musk. And this is a moment when we need it. It was, for many of us, a source of news. You have to always bring your discernment to it, of course. But now it's almost unusable, and worse, it is actually propagating. And Elon Musk himself is making recommendations for people to follow known bad actors. And yes, it does play right into the hands of those who want to get those horrible images out there.
The European Union has launched a probe of the role the platform is playing spreading misinformation about events in the Middle East. The US government has not. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, US President Joe Biden has left Israel after reaffirming support for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and promising $100 million of aid for Palestinians in Gaza. The United States has vetoed a United Nations Security Council resolution aimed at ending escalations in Gaza. And US Congressman Jim Jordan has failed for a second time to win enough votes to become Speaker of the House of Representatives. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
Frustrated with his increased workload and a litany of interpersonal problems, CLG software project manager William Garston brought a list of grievances Thursday to his supervisor Todd Watkins, an utterly powerless office functionary with no actual ability to resolve any problems.
Oh, no. I'm really glad that you're bringing this to me. This is great.
The 15-minute interaction, which was taken seriously by both parties, involved Garston laying out a series of work-related issues he's had recently, absolutely none of which Watkins has even the slightest authority to address.
Again, I'm sorry to be bothering you with all this stuff, Todd. I've reached a point where I was not under the...
This is important. We're gonna sort all this out.
Sources added that throughout the conversation, Watkins continually nodded his head and repeatedly assured Garston that his problems would be considered a top priority, despite the fact that he lacked the necessary clout to foster any change whatsoever within the company.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160. You can get on the air with us on Free Talk Live. And with you in the studio today, it's me, Bonnie,
Lori, and Nikki.
And that number is 603-283-6160 if you want to get in on the last hour of Free Talk Live with us. We do have a caller. We have Matthew calling in. Matthew, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm just calling because Nikki was talking about DUIs and getting pulled over. I think that the cops put out a lot of misinformation about that, and it makes it confusing. And so the thing is that, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, not legal advice, but the key there is that the only thing they can actually convict you on is a breath or blood sample. And so what will happen is that if you don't, you can refuse the field sobriety test, like the walking the line, touching your nose. You can absolutely refuse that. If you refuse the breath or blood sample, they'll hit you with an implied consent violation, which basically says that when you got a driver's license, you agreed that you would be subject to that kind of testing.
Yes.
And so you should never take the field sobriety test. And they couch it in language like, I just want you to prove to me that you're safe to drive. That's a lie. They're just trying to catch you because. So what'll happen is that they'll take that body cam footage and they'll be like, hey, you were unstable. You didn't follow the directions exactly as I put them out. And so the field sobriety test is really just a trap to get you to like, oh, I think I can beat this. You will never beat it. It's not possible to beat it,
rigged.
even if you do everything perfectly.
Yeah.
You'll do fine. But if you refuse the blood test or a breath test, you are fucked. Sorry.
You can't say it on there. Okay, I hope I got it in time.
You
sorry,
did.
I can't say it on the air. But I don't think you meant to say that. But yeah, I didn't know. I like when Nikki said that. I honestly was like, wow, I didn't know. But if you can't, the main thing is just like don't get in a conversation with cops. Like if you're able to, like I did get a cop having me do a breathalyzer thing, but I could have stopped it. I could have nipped it in the bud kind of thing. I could have been just like, I'm not getting any closer to you. In my case, I actually wasn't driving. It sounds crazy, but they said that I admitted I drove to work. I had been there for an hour, and they said I was drunk and that I smelled like alcohol. If I would have just said I'm not talking to you and not getting any closer because I was far away with the way that my desk was set up at this hotel, then I wouldn't have had... I don't think they would have had the opportunity to even ask me to take the test.
Yeah, exactly.
So not talking to cops is the best... policy. Thank you for the call, Matthew.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. So, and I have heard this before where like even just having a driver's license, like you consent to doing a breath test.
Maybe it's not the same in every state, but I don't know.
I don't see how just doing the breath test is just a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because especially if you know you're drunk, that's just evidence against you. Obviously, like different in your case, Bonnie, because you weren't actually drunk at that point. But it's just really like if you've been drinking, like that is just creating evidence against you. Like don't do any of their tests. Just say no, I'm not, and they're gonna arrest you. They're gonna bring you to the police station. So, and I think a lot of people are just trying to avoid that. They don't want their car to get towed. They don't want to deal with the mess.
I got taken out of the hotel I was working at. I was the only employee there. They had to call my boss and tell her to come show up in the middle of the night because they were arresting me for some bogus thing. It made me look really bad. Luckily, I didn't get fired.
Yeah, of course. And this is the thing with the police. I mean, their job is to harass you. So you can, and people are just trying their best. They're like, I just want this to be, as painless as possible. And I don't want my car to get towed. I don't want to pay all this money. I don't have to hire an attorney. Like they don't want to have to do all this stuff. Unfortunately, either way, you're probably going to have to do that no matter what you do. You can't reason with terrorists.
Yep.
They're going to terrorize you. Like that's their purpose. So unfortunately, like there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, you could speak out against it. Like there's something you can do, but
non-participation.
Yeah.
I don't have a license. I've never had one.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I've never voted. I've never registered to vote. Like none of it.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. Like, and that, actually, Lori, you're completely right. That is the best thing you can do for yourself is just exit the system and stop playing their game.
Mm-hmm. Jay Noon, who's a host on Thursdays, he told me that in Massachusetts specifically, when you sign up for a driver's license in Massachusetts, I forgot what it was now. Sorry, I started talking about it and forgot exactly what it was. But it was something crazy. It was like when you sign up for a license in Massachusetts, you are giving up some kind of right. And I was like,
Probably.
what? So,
anytime you sign up for any government service, you're giving up some kind of right. You're consenting to something.
Yeah.
It's, just like any free service that you're getting somewhere, you're consenting to something of value to them.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
well,
don't do it.
Right before the last segment ended, we were talking about this story from Reason Magazine about a guy who actually got arrested for just exercising his own freedom of speech at a city council meeting. He was speaking out about the cops because just, I think the week before, they had arrested Taven Galanakis. He was a high school football player. I think they said high school football player in the town who got arrested after blowing a 0.0 on a breathalyzer and passing roadside sobriety tests. He was taken to the police station for further drug tests, all of which came back negative. And this guy, his name is Noah Peterson. He was speaking out against the police and saying that they violate people's civil rights in a town meeting. So it says, Peterson approached the microphone and said, "Hello, this is my public comment for the city council meeting, now October 3rd, 2022. Defund Newton Police Department. They are a violent, civil, and human rights violating organization who do not make your community safer. They are also pro-domestic abuse because they are currently employing a domestic abuser and choosing not to release the records about that domestic abuser. Wow. That seems to be something that the cops will go after you for if you tell the public about their, beating their wives, which happens at a 40 or more % rate in the United States.
That's facts.
That's fact. In the police profession. At that point, the Newton mayor ordered Peterson to stop talking, although his allotted 3 minutes of time had not expired. That's so messed up. When Peterson refused, the mayor ordered the police chief to remove Peterson for violating a council rule forbidding derogatory statements or comments about any individual. That's so stupid. It's not derogatory to tell the town that they're employing a domestic abuser.
Right. The truth isn't derogatory.
Right. It's not like that he went up there and said that they're idiots. Wow.
Which they are. But, and that's actually also a fact. So
yeah,
that is the truth. That is the truth.
Peterson was handcuffed, arrested, and jailed until his parents could post bond for him. He returned to the next city council meeting to speak during the public comment period and was once again arrested after calling the police chief and mayor fascists. That's awesome.
Also facts.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is, based.
So this is a city council rule, right? And not a law.
Right.
So
but he's
what
getting
law
arrested.
did he break to get arrested?
Probably none, because you can really say anything you want. I mean, and that's the thing, like the rules, it's like, okay, well, I mean, I will have to read the rest of the story, but I guess if they're like, you're breaking the rules, you got to go.
That's
and then they
but that's not the
escorted
same
him.
as arresting him. Like they took
It
him.
doesn't say that he fought them. It's just they escorted him out.
I'm wondering what. Maybe it will come up with
He's
what it is.
refusing to leave and trespassing. I have no clue.
I guess.
Yeah, it could be a trespass.
But that's
or,
I don't know.
Oh, it's right here. It says Peterson was charged both times with disorderly conduct for disrupting a lawful assembly.
Oh my God, give me a break.
Because he broke the rules.
That's the most common, arrest for
because
nothing.
you can,
disorderly conduct.
Exactly. Because
Obstruction of
it's
justice, disorderly conduct, all of those. Yeah,
it's completely. You can just
make it
say
up.
anything.
Make it up.
That,
yeah,
basically.
exactly.
He said a thing I didn't like.
Yeah. Well, yeah, disorderly conduct.
Right.
Yeah.
However, as reasons Emma Camp reported in February, those charges did not stick. Last Wednesday, Peterson, this is a quote from Emma Camp, her article with reason from February. It says, last Wednesday, Peterson was found not guilty of his disorderly conduct charge. Adding to his victory, the judge overturned the rule barring derogatory statements about individuals during the city council meetings. That's awesome. As applied in this particular instance, the Newton City Council rule is violative of the First Amendment, the verdict states. Peterson did not act in any objectively unreasonable manner, the judge added. He read a prepared statement relating to the basic city service of policing. While some may not agree with the content of his comments, the court finds the statements made were not derogatory, nor about an individual. In the event the statements could be found derogatory or a comment about an individual, the court finds these terms vague and overbroad. So, yeah, he won that back in February.
Good.
But it says Peterson says the entire mess shows why he stepped up to the podium in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah, this totally made his point.
Yeah, exactly. Quote, ironically, the actions of the police department have only proven my point. My initial criticism was about the way they treat citizens in our community. They arrested me for exercising my right to free speech, for standing up for what I believe is right. Their reaction to my criticism was a clear demonstration of the very issue I was trying to highlight. Their actions underscore the urgent need for the very reforms I was advocating for. Unquote. Newton officials simply do not appear to take criticism well. As reasons Emma Camp reported earlier this month, the 2 Newton police officers who arrested Galinakis have since filed a defamation suit against him for publishing the body cam footage of his own arrest. This is similar to what's happening to our friend Press NH Now on YouTube. He released the body cam footage that was in discovery in his own case, and the cops tried to get a restraining order against him, saying that it was threatening or something like that. So stupid.
Their own actions were threatening?
Aren't they performing a public service?
Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And apparently there is a dumb law that kind of an RSA is what they call it in New Hampshire, that was kind of making it sound like it was illegal to post it. So it was so weird. The judge ordered that, not that he take down the video off his YouTube, but that he not post any more of it. It's like,
that is,
I think he didn't
everything
want to
about that's so dumb. Like,
Right.
he doesn't, and that, like, the judge there, he's like, I actually don't want to get, like, into it, so I'm not going to
Right.
make you take it down, but I'm going to tell you not to do any more.
They
He
do
should
that
post
kind
the
of
rest
thing
of
a lot.
it.
A lot of times,
Yeah.
like, when you're doing something that is technically illegal, but it's stupid that it's illegal, the cops, like, won't arrest you for it because they don't want you to have a case and overturn the law. Like, Preston H. Now and Ian and our co-host Riley went and filmed in the lobby. Actually, I don't think Ian filmed in the lobby just because he, like, had his own stuff to deal with, but of a court, and they wouldn't arrest them, even though it's technically against the policy or whatever, because they didn't want to have to fight that in court. And it was pretty obvious that was why. Well, taking a break from this story about this guy and how he ends up bringing a lawsuit against his town for this, we have Chuck on the phone in Washington. Chuck, what's on your mind?
Yeah, my next question was, does this guy sue the city in Massachusetts where his rights were violated for $250,000?
It's Iowa, actually. But yeah, he's going to sue them. Which is
Well, there
great.
you go. See, when local governments and stuff like this open up their podium for public comment, they're opening up themselves to have this happen, though, where people will test the limits and see, the First Amendment audit and all this kind of stuff. We have a pending case in my hometown here where somebody was just thrown out of a city council meeting by order of the mayor, and he's suing for $250,000.
Nice.
But at the same time, a lot of these states, state of Washington where I'm at, they don't require local elected bodies like city council or county commissioners to have a period where they receive public comments. So they could, in theory, just run and conduct their business and then not receive any kind of public comment during that meeting and just wait for you to give them an email or a phone call or whatever. So the local governments bring it on themselves when they do this. I'm all for democracy and people speaking up, but they'll always throw that catch-all disorderly conduct thing.
Yeah,
at
it
you.
is a catch-all.
It really is.
I'm glad also that guy you brought up is suing his town and that this guy is. Thank you for the call, Chuck. Obviously, if there's going to be rules, which I don't think that other people should tell other people how to live their lives, and we should just, learn not to hurt and steal from each other. If there's going to be rules, it's kind of funny that the cops think that they don't have to, abide by the rules like the First Amendment, like this guy was exercising his freedom of speech. Unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Well, we need a plan for what to do on Victory Day when it's the inevitable ultimate triumph of Operation USA Freedom.
What?
First of all, the enemies of liberty in Congress and in state legislatures need to know what are the immediate demands. What happens on Victory Day? Well, they'll have to open the borders and legalize all drugs and stop collecting school taxes and eliminate all zoning restrictions.
Why would we need those
and
people to do
curfews.
that? Why wouldn't we just ignore those people and do what we want, like do trade and everything we want with people from other countries and, all that good stuff you mentioned? I don't think we need Congress to do that.
Well, we need them to tell their goons to back off of people who families that are moving into the country, and you need a plan. Like what happens if Victory comes at 11 o'clock in the morning when government-run schools are in session? It would be dangerous.
I don't even know what that really means. Why
to-
would there be all of a sudden, government doesn't exist anymore, but it does? I don't know what you mean. Thank you for the call, Tom.
I mean, I get what he's talking about like, yeah, we should. It's hard because I don't actually, not that I don't care, but I just do whatever I want to do and don't really listen to the government.
It just doesn't make sense what he's saying.
I do get the point of like telling the goons to back off, right? Like, oh well, but it's a pipe dream, right? Like, oh well, if we pass all these laws,
and
then we're gonna have victory. I mean, even that is just a pipe dream in and of itself. I mean, that's a
what
joke.
incentive
It's a contradiction.
the government have?
But I get his point, kind of, where it's like, okay, well, if we pass all these laws and then to tell the government and their goons to stop attacking people, like, that would be good if the government wasn't attacking people, or governments around the world weren't attacking people.
Like, that's what they do. I don't see how they're suddenly going to have an incentive to listen to the people.
And this is why I'm saying, I'm like, yeah, it would be nice. Like, I get the point, because you can't always live your life and not get attacked. I mean, like, we know this.
Yeah, but you
as
also
people
can't
who
ask
have
people to just stop attacking you when they, I think that
like,
what would
that's
have
not
to
how
happen-
abuse works.
Yeah.
And so this is the thing. This is a good point. That's not how abuse works. If your husband is abusing you, you can't just be like, oh, the cops said to stop abusing me. The authorities said that you can't abuse me anymore. No, you have to leave him. You have to go far away. You can't have abusers stop being abusive, right? Same thing with the U.S. government. These people are abusive. You can't reason with terrorists.
Yep.
It's just like, that's
They're
not how
terrorists.
it works.
Well, I want to get into how this guy ended up winning his lawsuit, or maybe the lawsuit's going on. It says Newton officials simply do not appear to take criticism well, because they brought a defamation suit against him, the guy, for publishing the body cam footage of his own arrest, as well as claims he made about the officers on social media. A judge tossed out most of those defamation claims. The right to criticize police, even through vulgarities and rude gestures, is firmly enshrined in the First Amendment. As Supreme Court Justice William J. Brennan Jr. wrote in 1987 in a ruling striking down a Houston ordinance that made it unlawful to oppose or interrupt a police officer, quote, the freedom of individuals verbally to oppose or challenge the police action, or to oppose or challenge police action without thereby risking arrest, is one of the principal characteristics by which we distinguish a free nation from a police state. Wow. Peterson's lawsuit is seeking compensatory and punitive damages, as well as a judgment declaring Newton's derogatory comments rule unconstitutional. I thought that they kind of already said that they did that. Well, I guess just a judgment saying even further, not just that they have to get rid of that rule, but that it's unconstitutional, I guess. By ordering their opponents arrested, Newton's officials behaved like petty dictators in a banana republic rather than democratically elected leaders in a constitutional republic, Institute for Justice attorney Brian Morris said. Anyone with a high school diploma should know that having your political opponents arrested is a textbook example of violating someone's First Amendment rights, and we're confident that the courts will agree. Attorneys for the town of Newton did not immediately respond for a request for comments. Of course they didn't, because they're pretty freaking in the wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, that's the story about the man who was arrested for exercising his freedom of speech just because it went against cops, because he spoke out against cops in his town. We also have a story from the Minnesota Reformer, minnesotareformer.com. Small business owners say they're pressured to hire off-duty MPD cops for security. So, Minneapolis, I think it is, Minneapolis Police Department, says the city is considering challenging a 1997 injunction limiting city control of officers' security gigs. So I think this means that the city wants to get rid of this law, and when they do, they'll be able to control more people and make them hire off-duty officers for their security gigs, and which is crazy. I didn't think this was like a thing happening in America, but apparently it is.
Not surprised.
It says, when Maya Santa Maria was opening a Minneapolis club in 2003, a city worker handed her a card from a Minneapolis police officer and said, "You're going to work with this guy." To get a business license, a licensing employee told her she had to hire a certain number of off-duty Minneapolis police officers to provide security. Why? Quote, because they're racist and we're Mexican, Santa Maria said.
Oh, wow.
They didn't want to let Mexicans have nightclubs. That's what
she just like came right out and said it.
Right.
Like she did not hold back.
It says that's her conclusion after seeing other similar-sized white owners-owned venues escape the same mandate.
Weird. So this isn't a law then? I'm just so confused about what's going on.
So basically, maybe it is a mandate in the licensing area, but they're just letting some people get away with it.
So, okay, so if you want a license, okay, so they're kind of, because they can kind of pick and choose who they give a license to.
Yeah,
based
legally,
on,
but not, like,
based on hiring
right.
off-duty police officers, though?
I mean, that doesn't sound, if it's a mandate and they can point to something, but
either way, I feel like they would they had pressured her into this. So let's get into it. It's a really weird, interesting story. I've never heard of anything like this. 603-283-6160. You have one more segment to get on the air with us. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating US dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. But what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has left Israel after reaffirming support for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and promising $100 million of aid for Palestinians in Gaza. He backed the Israeli claim that Palestinian militants were responsible for the explosion at a Gaza hospital that killed an estimated 500 people. Biden also said that he'd secured a commitment from Israel to allow food and water in through the Gaza border crossing with Egypt. And the US president gave his rock-solid support to the Israeli Prime Minister. FSN's Sarah Coates reports from Tel Aviv.
A real whirlwind crisis trip for the US president, coming at a time that the US is once again reaffirming its support for Israel, and while this region is really teetering on the brink. Before boarding Air Force One, coming out to say that we will not stand by and do nothing again. He also mentioned the US's support in terms of military aid, saying that the US has sent many resources like aircraft carriers. He also leveled a warning at other regional players. We're talking namely here about Iran and Hezbollah, saying if you're thinking about attacking Israel, the message remains the same as it has this past week. Don't.
Meanwhile, the United States has vetoed a United Nations resolution on escalations in Gaza. The UN Security Council rejected a draft text put forward by Brazil calling for humanitarian pauses in fighting between Israel and Hamas. FSN's Sally Patterson reports from UN headquarters in New York.
12 in favour, 2 abstentions, and the United States against. The draft UN resolution condemned all violence and hostilities against civilians and called for the immediate release of hostages being held in Gaza. But both the US and the United Kingdom said it needed to be clearer on Israel's right to self-defense. Meanwhile, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire.
US Congressman Jim Jordan has failed for the second time to win enough votes to become Speaker of the House of Representatives, leaving the heart of American democracy in a state of paralysis. FSN's Benji Hire reports from Washington.
It was not the day of triumph that Jim Jordan had hoped for. Congress's lower chamber remains dysfunctional, rudderless, with huge implications at home and abroad. Without someone wielding the gavel, legislation, including on aid for Israel, simply can't get passed by lawmakers. Speaker-designate Jordan could keep fighting, though the maths isn't in his favour. Republicans may have to look for another, more moderate candidate to coalesce around to fill what Congressman Ken Buck describes as the worst job in America.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control. If you want to get in on the conversation in the last segment, 603-283-6160 is the number, 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's me, Bonnie,
Lori,
and Nikki.
And we were getting into the story right before the last segment ended that is so crazy and weird to me, because I have just never heard of a story like this, or a law like this. Well, really, it's an ordinance, I think it said.
Mandate?
A mandate, yeah. For people who are getting a business license, they'd have to hire security, and it would have to be off-duty Minneapolis police officers. But it gets worse than just having to hire someone. It says... she said that it was because they're racist and she's Mexican.
Also, I love that she just called him out like that.
Yeah.
More people need to do that. Say it like it is. Speak your truth.
She said that's her conclusion, the article said that's her conclusion after seeing other similar-sized, white-owned venues escape the same mandate. With over $1 million invested, Santa Maria had little choice. You gotta do what they say, she said. Then MPD socked it to me, she said. They started out paying the officers $40 to $45 an hour, always more than one officer per night.
Wow.
And they didn't just work 1 or 2 hours. They charged a minimum of 4 hours no matter how many they actually worked, she said. The pay gradually increased to nearly $60 an hour.
What? How does that even happen, though? Like, how can they just dictate what she has to pay them?
It's because you would think we were in a free country, so I just can't even believe this is happening.
Yeah.
Quote, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, she said. There were many years I wasn't making it, and they didn't give a damn.
So this is for years?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Started in
And being a
2003.
business owner, I mean, it's hard being a business owner, and there's a lot of expenses, and it should be her decision whether she has security or not. And it's like, okay, well, at first I started off, I thought I needed this really good security, so I was paying these guys $60 an hour. But I'm not making as much money now, so now I'm going to hire like some random kid that'll do it for $15. You know what I mean? Like, as a business owner, you
should
deserve,
be able to make that decision.
Like, exactly. It shouldn't be like, our price is just going to keep increasing and.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking of what we would talk about next. Sorry, but we are going to finish this article here. She says that she spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and there were many years that she wasn't making it. That sounds terrible. Many years, not just a year. And they didn't give a damn. Santa Maria was later required to come up with security plans outlining the number of officers needed per night. The officers insist, so they're also requiring her specific things she has to do, with her time as a business owner, which they don't have a lot of time. The officers insisted on getting paid cash, she said.
That is sketchy. That is starting to sound really sketchy now.
It sounds like the mafia.
Yeah, no kidding.
You have to hire us for your public or your private security team, even
if
though
you don't want to.
Even if you don't want to, and you have to pay us a specific amount, no matter how much we work.
In a specific currency.
Cash only, no records.
She feared if she didn't oblige, she'd lose her license. Eventually, another officer helped schedule off-duty work. Derek Chauvin. Wow. He worked security at
that
her club.
That sounds familiar.
Oh, he's the guy that killed George Floyd? He's the guy that, yeah.
I was like, that name sounds familiar.
Yeah, so...
because that was Minneapolis.
It says another officer...
The plot thickens.
I wonder what that even means, that another officer helped schedule off-duty work. It says he worked security at her club for 17 years. They were in charge and everybody had to go through them, she said. El Nuevo Rodeo became Minnesota's largest Latino concert venue, and while there were a few brawls, we never were a problem property, Santa Maria said. So it's like they didn't really need this much security, probably. MPD officers would usually sit in their squad cars, fully uniformed, and do crossword puzzles or chat with their girlfriends or spouses.
So they're literally, I mean, that's what cops do anyways.
Yeah.
You know how many times I've like driven past a cop and I'm like, oh, he's passed out in his cruiser.
Yeah, I saw a cop in such a weird, funny, like hiding place. Like, when, I don't know, I was with Ian, so it had to be a couple weeks ago before he went to jail for selling Bitcoin. And this cop was like backed up into the forest.
Yeah, they do. They get crazy. So it's
funny.
like, oh my gosh.
They
but
hide.
Yeah.
Because that's how you protect people, is by hiding from them.
Yeah.
I know.
With your ghost cruisers and hiding in the woods.
Right. The black on black decals.
Mm-hmm.
It says sometimes they'd go help MPD with calls, like not even helping her.
So she's
while they're off duty?
While they're off duty and they're being paid by her to protect her club, which she doesn't even want them to do, I guess.
That's crazy.
So they were gone half the time. They were on my payroll, but they were gone, she said. She sold the club in 2019 when Santa Maria saw Chauvin pinning George Floyd on the pavement in the video that shocked the world. She recognized both because Floyd worked as a bouncer inside the club in 2019. I wondered if this was the same club because I'd always heard that they had worked in the same club at one point. Yeah,
I didn't know
it's
that.
really weird.
So he was the bouncer inside the club. Were the cops private security outside? Just parked outside?
That's a great question. I would think that they would.
She said they were parked out in their cruiser doing crossword puzzles and talking to their girlfriends. But if they wanted cops stationed there, shouldn't they just have cops stationed there instead of forcing the business owner to hire an off-duty cop to sit outside?
Yeah. No, it makes no sense at all.
It says that El Nuevo Rodeo burned to the ground during the subsequent riots. Oh my God, that's terrible.
What?
Too.
Okay, this is like a wild story.
Yeah.
Minneapolis is quite the place.
That's just really terrible that this business that this woman
that's
put
why
so much money into.
Oh, but did she sell it? Did she sell it or? I
hadn't seen that she sold it yet.
I thought you said she sold it in 2019.
Oh,
or maybe I was confused.
No, it says she recognized both because Floyd worked as a bouncer inside the club in 2019.
I might just be imagining things.
She got she started the club in 2003. So there it is. It says yes. She sold the club in 2019. Okay, well.
Okay, so I did. I was like, I swear that was, but then
it's someone's club. Someone owned this club.
Exactly.
And it wasn't their fault that George Floyd died. And somebody burned down this business owner's business because of it. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Santa Maria's allegations about MPD off-duty work are echoed by the experiences of other business owners documented in government reports and even remarked upon by the city's new police chief, Brian O'Hara. He said the system is ripe for corruption, citing a federal investigation in Jersey City where a dozen cops were arrested due to widespread corruption of off-duty work. The timing is favorable for more rigorous oversight. MPD is soon to be operating under both state and federal supervision following damning investigative reports about racist policing, and O'Hara is a newish outsider who speaks the rhetoric of reform. And it kind of doesn't seem like a good thing for this, way for this to end up like, oh, well, the people of Minneapolis begged for reform of their cops, so what they're going to get is the feds in their city.
I know.
Really terrible.
Oh gosh.
Way worse cops, basically.
This is how cops started. Was they would kind of force themselves on business owners as security.
Also, going and grabbing slaves, like it's always been a racist institution. It really doesn't surprise me that this woman.
Yeah, right. That's a good point, and it's not surprising that cops are obviously blatantly super racist all the time. I mean, this is.
That's what their profession came from.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is, historically speaking. Duh.
It says changes to off-duty policing face a key obstacle, however. A 1997 court injunction restricts how much the city can manage officers' side gigs. Given the injunction, the city can only seek major reforms via the collective bargaining process, which means if the city wants to change off-duty policies, it would likely have to give up something in return. That's so weird. Like, what kind of place is this?
It's saying that it only has so much power to restrict them, but also you have to hire them. Is that what the article says?
I was really confused about it in just the subtitle of this article. I thought that the city wanted to make it to where more businesses have to hire off-duty cops. Now it's saying like, oh, they've kind of seen the error of their ways, but oh, their hands are tied because of this injunction. So it's a little weird. It says, here's how the off-duty work program works.
Okay.
Some businesses, like large nightclubs, are required by the city to have security, which until 2020 sometimes had to be off-duty Minneapolis police officers. The city can also require that organizers of large events and businesses plagued with a lot of 911 calls also hire off-duty MPD officers. Businesses may also voluntarily hire off-duty officers for security and traffic control and negotiate pay and hours directly with officers. It's just like terrible that you can't just like hire your friend that lives down the street that does security work, you know? You have to hire an officer.
Well, yeah, because you can't, because that's how the mafia works, right? You know, it's like you can't, good luck doing, having the same business that the mafia is doing, right? Like you're not, if they're selling pies, you better not be selling pies because they're going to,
they don't
come
want
to
competition.
they're going to pay you a visit.
It says the city doesn't keep track of how much officers are working or how much they're paid or even have access to the contracts.
Well, yeah, because it's in cash, so there's like no paper trails.
That's so weird, yeah.
I'm surprised. That actually is surprising to me.
I wonder if they're paying taxes.
They don't have access to the contracts, but they force you to hire.
Yeah. Interesting. There has to be something.
How do they even know that you've done it if they don't have access to the contracts?
Yeah, like this whole thing is so sketchy.
Right.
So sketchy. I mean, like so many red flags.
Off-duty work often pays a lot more, up to hundreds of dollars per hour, than working overtime for MPD. Some officers are still paid in cash, increasing the risk of tax evasion. Not that that's really it's not like I believe in taxes, but I just think it's kind of ironic and funny that they would evade paying taxes, and they probably do because they insist to be paid in cash.
Is it ironic that the law enforcement constantly breaks the law?
No, well, yeah, it's ironic, but it's not surprising.
Yeah.
And several business owners and Minneapolis officials said some small business owners, particularly those owned by immigrants, have been led to believe that they must hire MPD officers or risk getting ghosted by police. That's exactly like the mafia.
Mm-hmm. Yes, like this is what I'm saying. Like this is because, we always draw these lines like, oh, the government's terrorists. And, we always draw these lines. And sometimes it's not blatantly obvious and we're kind of whatever, like not like
people
we're making it up.
You sound crazy saying
that. Like there are certain things we said where it's like, oh, I could see how people could disagree with me. This is blatant. Like this is so blatantly in your face, like exactly how the mafia operates. Like there is no question. Anyone who says anything different is lying to themselves and just is willingly being ignorant.
If you don't know what we mean, basically the mafia in 1920s New York City, you would have this idea of, and it's not like this didn't really happen, I just don't have an exact example, but you would have this idea of them going to business owners being like, oh, it's a nice window, be a shame if someone broke it. You got to hire me for taking for security, and if you don't, someone might break your window type of thing. That's basically the exact same thing. Like, oh, you have to hire us for security, or else if you call the cops, we might not show up.
Right.
Yeah, or we'll revoke your business license or what, because that seems like what she was really worried about. She invested all this money. I mean, and that's the thing, going back to don't even bother asking for permission because you're just trouble. That gives them all of the leverage over you.
We've talked about so many things that make me hate the government today, but business licenses are so terrible. It's so ridiculous that you'd have to ask anyone for permission to just run a business. Mm-hmm. Something that's going to help possibly thousands of people, definitely your whole community, raise people out of poverty. It's like it being illegal to donate to charity.
Yeah.
When you're
which
doing work
sometimes
for
it
people.
is. Sometimes it is illegal to like feed homeless people and
house them sometimes.
Yeah, it is. So, yeah. Oh, gosh.
It says it was exactly this arrangement that caught the attention of the U.S. Department of Justice in its 2011 report on the New Orleans Police Department. So they were doing the same thing there. In fact, the MPD off-duty situation has parallels to New Orleans Police Department before the feds arrived. The recent DOJ investigative report about MPD drew only a passing but still condemnatory, I've never had to say that word, so I probably said it wrong, reference to off-duty jobs. The DOJ was looking for racism. Some business owners of color say look no further. Bazim Sabri, owner of a Somali mall called Carmel Mall and a Latino mall called Plaza Mexico on Lake Street, this must be in Minneapolis still, since it's the Minnesota Reformer, said he held a Cinco de Mayo party every year for 27 years to encourage people to come to the area and see that it really isn't a war zone. It is a beautiful place. For years, they never had had police there, and then about a dozen years ago, he said there was a shooting a few blocks away from the event. The city began requiring him to hire off-duty police. Lake Street has been tremendously damaged, and instead of helping us, they're hurting us, said Sabri, who once went to prison for bribing a city council member. I wonder why they said that. Randomly, it's kind of weird. The officer rates have skyrocketed, he said. He pays officers $150 to $160 an hour, and a scheduler also charges $15 to $20 an hour. The guy who so instead of him doing the scheduling, that is just extra work that people would be required to do, like that lady who owned the club, well, this guy has to pay a scheduler to do that job. Despite the big payouts, when he calls the police for help, they don't always respond, Sabri said. About 6 weeks ago, a man came into his office with a gun and said he was going to shoot someone. They called 911, but police never came.
Wow.
So
Crazy.
even if you pay, they don't show up.
Yep.
Great.
I mean, it's definitely not about protecting people.
No, of course not.
It's about making money, making $150 an hour to, force someone to let you on their property and
do crossword puzzles.
Yeah, do crossword puzzles and talk to your wife.
Honestly, though, I'm going to be real. I would rather them do crossword puzzles than whatever else they're going to do.
Well, if it
you know
was,
what I mean? Like, obviously, if you're getting paid for a job, you should at least do that job. If you're supposed to be security, you should act as security. But it's better than the alternative of them murdering George Floyd and raping women and beating their wives. At least crossword puzzle seems pretty tame.
Those are in their off time.
Oh, right, yeah.
Vacation
well, at least
time.
we're not paying them to do that.
It's just this guy
right.
Someone could have showed up to stop this guy with a gun. Be a really tough guy. Their jobs are so hard, right?
Yeah, so
they
dangerous.
Do things like stop a guy who has a gun and is threatening to shoot people.
Except they actually don't.
They just don't show up.
They're just revenue collectors.
Yep. Says an MPD spokesman said, going back to July 1st, all calls we found relating to guns at Carmel Mall did have a police response, and none of the calls matched the details of Sabri's account. So the MPD spokesman says that he's lying. Jonathan Soto, owner of EME Antro nightclub at 5th Avenue and Lake Street, hired MPD officers, including Chauvin, that guy who killed George Floyd, to monitor his parking lot for a couple years, but stopped after Floyd's murder. The officers wanted to be paid in cash and would sometimes leave to respond to police calls, like the other lady said, which benefited the city, he said. The city kind of liked that, Soto said, because they were literally getting work out of him that this business owner was paying for. That's crazy. The city kind of liked that, Soto said. The FBI interviewed him after Floyd was killed, asking how much he paid officers. That's weird. Other business owners said the officers don't always respond to problems right under their noses. Santa Maria said the club next to hers was tiny but had to have their own cop, who she described as an old guy who would refuse to help anybody from her club. After several East African-owned stores on Franklin Avenue in Minneapolis were vandalized in September 2019, Capital Cafe owner That looks like it's a business. Abdurrahman Awad called his friend KB Brown, owner of a North Minneapolis print shop and a member of the Main Street Alliance of Minnesota, a group of progressive business owners. KB Brown said the detectives were rude and disrespectful to Awad. Awad later said MPD later told him they'd have to pay off-duty officers $145 an hour to provide security. He returned the next night and saw almost no police presence despite the alleged hate crime. In his view, MPD was sending a message that the cafe would only get protection if it hired off-duty officers. It's the same thing. It's the mafia stuff. So it looks like this story does go on. It's pretty long, but I found those stories really interesting. And if you want to read the rest of it, it's at minnesotareformer.com. And I just thought that was a really crazy, crazy story. Moving on, though. I was going to bring in this story. It's not really that important or good, but I think it's funny. It's Elon Musk to charge new X users $1 a year for basic accounts. So Twitter is now called X. And I don't really like saying it. I just still say Twitter and tweeting. I'm not going to say
I think everybody does. Anyone that says X is...
Try hard.
Yeah.
You want Elon to love you or something.
Something.
It says Musk is going to charge people $1 a year for a basic account. New users in the Philippines and New Zealand are the first to be asked for an annual payment in the latest change to the platform.
That's weird to like.
It's so weird.
Single them out or whatever.
$1. Oh,
I know. Honestly, yeah, $1. Bye. Like I'll delete my account. I'm not paying. I'm
only new users.
Oh,
so if you're existing, then you don't have to pay.
So that's just like trying to get people to not make account. Like that just seems so dumb.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's always going to be new users, but their trial run for it or whatever in New Zealand and the Philippines was just the new users. And it says X, the social media site formerly known as Twitter, has begun charging new users in New Zealand and the Philippines to use the platform's basic features and aims to expand the annual fee to all new users globally. That's just kind of weird. It seems so weird. Like one day I'm going to be able to be like, I am one of the grandfathered in Twitter users. I didn't have to pay the $1. It's so dumb.
I'm just
weird.
Trying to. This is just typical me making everything a conspiracy, right? But I'm just trying to figure out like what, like really, because so many people are very critical of Elon Musk because obviously he's like a really great businessman. I mean, he's like one of the richest men in the world right now. Has several very successful businesses. And then this was the one flop, right? Like he bought Twitter just to make a point, right? And now he's losing like millions of dollars on it, essentially. So what was I don't believe that someone like Elon Musk would make a mistake like that. You know what I mean? So I want to know like what is the real like why did he buy Twitter?
Like, are you saying
what is the real what is his real motive?
Like, is he trying to make Twitter suck now? Because like it kind of seems like he's doing that.
Does he? Is it a control thing? I don't because it's like you're calling it X, bad business move. Yeah, making people pay for it, bad business moves. Like none of the changes he's making are good. So I'm just like there has to be something else there. Not like it really matters, but
there was some other weird stuff he did, like forcing everyone to be
verified.
He took away all the check marks, right? And then you have to pay for them now.
$8 for them.
You have to pay for them now. And then there was no one can block him.
Oh wow!
Yeah, no one can block Elon Musk.
It's just weird. It's like
it's some weird control thing. Like
that's
he
what
wants
I think.
to
Like
be liked
if
desperately.
Like this is like his weird like autistic plea at
be
like
my friend.
Yeah, something like I don't know. Like there's something, and it might be as simple as that, right? It might be something like really. Yeah, like I don't know. Like what is it? Like I don't. There's.
It must be hard to have friends when you're.
Billionaire.
When you're Elon Musk. Yeah,
when you don't know if people actually want to be your friend or they just want money or
that's why I'm poor and not famous, so I have real friends.
What's weird is under the trial, the new users in the Philippines and New Zealand will have to pay about 75 cents and 85 cents respectively each year to be able to post and engage on X. It's just like, how is that going to make you any money? Like, fewer people sign up and then they won't see the ads, which make you money instead of getting 75 cents from them.
Ads would make more sense.
It doesn't make any sense to me, but Free Talk Live will be back tomorrow, 603-283-6160. Save that in your phone. It's been Free Talk Live. Bye.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So